My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe that they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today, we have Hilary Myers, my amazing wife who has been gracious enough to jump on my dumb little horror movie podcast. When we first met, I think it would be an understatement to say that Hilary was not a horror movie fan. But 16 years later, and she's dropping names like Nick Castle in conversations with me and referencing deep cut horror movies. She goes with me to Tear Tuesday occasionally and encourages me to follow my passion. I love her so much and consider myself incredibly lucky to call her my wife. Okay, now let's talk about killer dolls. Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Miguel. I am delighted to be here.
Oh, don't call me Miguel.
What am I supposed to call you? Lover?
Don't call me lover. This is... I'm not... This is being cut. Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Miguel Villa.
Say, hey, sweetie. Or just say, thanks. Don't call me by my name.
Okay, fine.
Don't call me by my name. Opposite of that movie.
I'll call you by my name.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay.
Thank you, Hilary. That's what I'll say.
Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thanks, babe.
I'll take it. So, Hilary, what is your history with horror? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Obviously, I think I know more or less. The audience doesn't. So, did you grow up watching horror movies or not?
No. Horror was not really one of those genres that my family was really big into. And it wasn't something that I particularly liked. I think I empathize too much with the actors. And so I get really scared and have a hard time disconnecting. My mom tells this funny story about how when I was watching Jurassic Park in the theaters, I had to leave because it was too scary. And I feel like I was in high school at that point. So watching something like Halloween would have been impossible. And then I married the biggest horror nerd ever. So my relationship with horror has changed quite a bit since we met. But I think I've started to kind of appreciate it more since you and I have been together. And then also, actually, there's certain films that I really like.
Okay, but when I first met you, all those many years ago, you really liked Stephen King books. Like you used to read a lot of them. Not so much now, but I think that was one of our primary bonding things was our love for Stephen King. So that's horror, obviously.
That's horror, and I also feel that Stephen King is in a different realm from a lot of horror films. I think that some of the horror that you see is really schlocky, especially the older, like 80s horror. And then especially when I was, in the early 2000s, when I was kind of starting to go out on my own, I went to, go to college and all that kind of thing. I feel like they were getting into some of the torture porn stuff like Saw or Hostel. And that stuff was way too intense for me. And that was the stuff that was kind of really popular at the time. Stephen King... Usually, I think I was reading some of his books and realized that there's one or two particularly gory scenes in his books. There's one or two like battles or whatever. And after that, the rest of it, a lot of it is narrative, is story building, is world building. And there's a lot of tension, but it's not disgusting. It doesn't make you feel, it doesn't make you necessarily feel incredibly scared. It just makes you, kind of fall in love with these characters. So it's different, I think.
And I think you went a little bit light on your aversion to horror movies because you have like visceral reactions to things.
I think it's gotten a lot better over the years as you and I have watched more horror films. But I remember we watched all the Halloween movies together, and the first Halloween actually wasn't even that, gory. If you've ever watched it, it's not terribly, but still for me it was incredibly scary. And then it really only gets worse as that franchise, it gets bloodier and bloodier as the years go by. So I think that was maybe your and my first interactions together with horror, was watching that series, that series of movies that you love so much. And then obviously you get to like Halloween 6, where the that amazing scene at the farmhouse where he picks her up and puts her on that piece of farming equipment. Oh, gross. So gross.
So you have said this multiple times when you talk to different people about your history with horror, or specifically our history. You always talk about this time when we took like a weekend, or was it a day? We can't see it in a day, right? Like, so we took a weekend to watch the movies?
We didn't take a weekend. We just slowly watched them over the course of a few months.
Oh, okay. I remembered it differently. I thought it was more condensed. So then my question was going to be, how fucked up did that, like, because if that colored your perspective of horror for the next 10 years, our relationship, did it all stem from that couple months of just watching Michael Myers? Like, did that put you off of horror for a while?
I don't think that put me off of horror particularly any more than I sort of wasn't really a big fan of horror before that. But I do think that there was this underlying dynamic of, oh, I've got to watch horror because, Miguel watches horror and I want to be supportive, but I just don't know if I can do it. So I think maybe it created a little bit more tension that way. I don't think that Halloween, especially the first couple, they weren't particularly bloody. So as far as an introduction to horror, those were pretty, I think, kind of gentle-ish films compared to some of the other things that we could have started with. Like, everybody talks about how amazing Saw was, but I'm sure that would have been much harder to watch. I still haven't seen it. I think there was this weird period for me where when I was really young, I read a lot of Stephen King. And I was able to read that with a younger person's I'm going to live forever sort of mentality. And also because it was a book and it wasn't a movie, and you didn't watch it in one, sitting, 1 hour and a half intense sitting. You'd read it slowly over the course of a week or so. It was a lot easier for me to read those books. And then when I got into my early 20s, and started watching these films, they were really intense. It's obviously much more intense to have that whole story unfold over the course of just a couple hours. And then also you hit this point where you're like, oh shit, I'm not going to live forever. And these things are real, and you have experiences that have terrified you. And suddenly the things that are happening in the movies don't seem funny. They don't seem outside reality. They seem very real. And even if they're not really happening, they're happening in a version of that somewhere. There are real serial killers out there that have a higher body count than Michael Myers. Actually, probably not by now, this far into the franchise. I'm sorry.
You watch your mouth.
But those things do happen.
But we've talked in the past about your Bush and Judge, your grandma and grandpa on your mom's side. And specifically your judge, he loved Halloween, didn't he? Like the actual holiday of
He
Halloween.
did love Halloween, the holiday.
And he would dress up in
He would dress up, but he was a
homemade
guy.
stuff, right?
He loved putting together a good costume.
Yeah.
But I think for him, he was a very social guy, and I think Halloween was a really fun social holiday. You got to dress up, you got to do the trick-or-treating with his kids, and then when my mom and my aunt moved out of the house, then they had little kids coming to their house. They loved that. The dress up, the Halloween party at the senior center, I think the social aspect of it and the holiday aspect of it was really big for him, but I don't know if it was the scary aspect. Although I will say that I think they took me to one of my first ever haunted houses in Chicago, and I lost something. I can't remember if it was like a little, because I was really little, so I feel like it might have been like a little girl purse or maybe a shoe or something. It was so weird. I got almost all the way home and I'm like, oh no, I'm missing whatever. But I'd been so terrified going through the haunted house, I had not even realized it till we were home. And of course, there's so many people going through those things.
Yeah.
I did want to add one thing though that we haven't really talked about. One of the things that I think I've fallen in love with more with horror over the past few years. So it's weird that we are talking about this horror, my relationship with horror. I honestly feel a few years ago, you and I went through a very difficult family. We lost someone,
Mm-hmm.
and that we both cared about, and that, oddly enough, for me, made it easier to watch horror. I feel like after that happened, that experience that we went through in real life was so painful that watching horror, suddenly it felt like it put horror in its place. It wasn't this larger than life, that's really happening to me kind of thing, because I'd already experienced something that was actually really sad and really hard, and there was nothing that would scare me or terrify me or hurt me as much in those films as what I'd just gone through in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that was a huge turning point for me, that suddenly I was able to put the horror aspect of the films in the back seat and just kind of like see it for what it is. And then once you do that, there's horror expresses all these deep fears about that people really have. Fear of death, of loss, of everything. There's so much going on there. And I was a psychology major, so for me, that's really exciting to like be able to see something that kind of explores the human mind a little bit. So once you take the horror aspect and kind of put it in its place, the horror film itself is really interesting, and I think that allowed me to connect in a weird way with a lot of the films that you already loved.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're starting to see it like that. And what I hear you saying is we can now ratchet up the level of movies that we watch together. So like Saw.
We are not watching Saw.
I'm not the biggest fan of Saw, but it was a good movie. But actually, we're not going to watch Saw.
We're not going to watch.
I'll just tell you that
you can watch Saw.
The original Saw is much more of a straight up horror movie than torture porn. It was after Saw came out, and then Hostel came out. That was torture porn, and then all the other stuff started to be worse. But the original Saw, it's kind of like Halloween is to the rest of the slasher films. Like you're saying, Halloween is more suspenseful than it is graphic and stuff. It's the same thing with Saw. So, all right, Hilary. So you've come on to confess your horror sin that you have never seen the movie
Dolly Dearest.
Dolly Dearest.
Such a good movie. Also that you haven't seen it. So we're kind of both confessing? Is that how that works?
I am interviewing you. Thank you.
Okay.
So Dolly Dearest from 1991, directed by Maria Leese and written by Maria Leese, Rod Nave, and Peter Sutcliffe, starring Denise Crosby, Sam Bottoms, and for some reason, Rip Torn. So, to be 100% honest, I don't think I've ever actually even heard of this movie. You found it.
I found it.
Yeah.
It was direct to video.
Right. It was direct to video. And it came out after Child's Play. So, it's kind of a rip-off of it. But a lot of movies came out around that time. Dolls, which is a great movie. And there's a bunch of other evil doll movies, but it was precursor as a precursor to a trilogy of terror with Karen Black. It's an anthology film, and there was a evil doll in there as well, but it was a voodoo doll or Africa doll, and so Child's Play wasn't the first one to do it. So, and I don't actually even like Child's Play too much. I think that the child actor is absolutely atrocious and makes the movie unwatchable for me. Have you ever seen Child's Play with Chucky?
I saw it a long time ago, and I don't remember where, but all of those like evil, small-sized people. So the evil dolls, Pet Cemetery with the evil child, all of those where they're below your hip level and you can't really see them coming. Those are kind of terrifying to me.
Yeah, creepy kids suck. So before you guys come at me about Child's Play, it's just not my favorite. Actually, I haven't even seen any movie besides part one. So I've heard it gets better, and there's other films in the series that are really good, and I know I need to check those out. But the child actor from part one really put me off to it. So what was the process of you finding this movie?
Well, I knew you were. We had talked about doing an episode with me on the podcast, and I was trying to find something that you hadn't seen, I hadn't seen, and again that met the criteria that we're looking for. And I specifically wanted to do something that was directed by a woman, and so I did some Googling and found a list of horror films that were directed by women, and there were a couple of really cool ones, but Dolly Dearest was just stuck out to me because it was directed by a woman. It starred a number of women. There were some films that were directed by a woman, but then they had a majority male cast or only a male lead pretty much. And I just really connected with the story as well. The whole evil doll thing really seemed like it would be cute and funny and terrifying all at the same time. So that really pulled me in. I liked all of those different aspects.
Yeah, and actually the director, you said she's a woman director, Maria Elise. Did you look into her at all?
I did.
Okay.
I did. It looks like she got her start in porn, directing and script supervising. She didn't get her start acting in porn. Is that what you were gonna?
No, I don't know if we classify it as porn. I guess in the 70s.
It was X-rated.
Yeah, it's rated X movies, so I guess that's porn. Yeah.
And then it also looks like she was mostly a script supervisor, and she had only a few directing credits. And this was, I feel like this movie could have been her big break, but somehow it just wasn't taken very seriously. And after that, she did a lot more script supervising, but I don't see, the ramp up to becoming a more established director, which made me really sad because when I looked up what a script supervisor actually does, all the behind the scenes work that they do, kind of coordinating with all the different departments, making sure there's continuity on the film, I thought, oh my God, this was her thing. She was kind of like ramping up to be a director. She was taking on this extra responsibility. The movie came out, it didn't do that great, and
so for the audience, Hilary is very competitive.
yes.
And she's also project manager.
I am.
So she has gone out of her way to be more prepared for this podcast than I am. However, what she doesn't know is that she is more prepared than I am. But I will say that it did have a brief theatrical run in the Midwest before its May 1992 video release. Thank you, IMDb. So, but I was kind of
so the last minute fact checking. That's where we're going. That's the job.
Actually, I didn't feel I needed to write down. Actually, I didn't feel like I needed to write down that fact because I didn't think it'd come up. But you brought it up, so I said it. However, I was just going to say that I was kind of disappointed that the director didn't do anything else after this, because this movie was competently directed. I think I enjoy this movie better than Child's Play, and I think the story was better, and she wrote it. So it's a shame that she didn't do anything afterwards. And I tried looking up more of her actual story, but I couldn't find anything else.
I don't know if we want to talk about this now or later, but I also thought it was really interesting that the film was eventually redistributed by Vinegar Syndrome. Did you want to?
Well, that's the edition that we saw, was the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
A 2K release. What do you think? I thought it looked pretty beautiful.
I thought it looked pretty good as well, but I did some Googling of the Vinegar Syndrome, and they were also established to redistribute classic porn.
So the connection could be right there.
They were established in 2012, and they were trying to re-release pornos rather, from the 1960s through the 1980s, and then they expanded their category, the categories of film that they were going to distribute, into certain things like horror. And so I just found that really interesting. There's this immediate leap between porn and horror that I thought was, maybe you should comment on, being the horror fan that you are.
I have no comments on that, but it's a really cool connection I didn't even know. So we start with a wooden sign in Spanish that says "No pase por orden del Departamento de Arqueología," which is misspelled. It should be Arqueología. So we're not off to a great start here. The camera pans down to an entrance to what looks like a mine shaft. We hear wolves in the background and what sounds like digging happening. We see what appears to be Mayan glyphs adorning an entrance. Finally, we see an older gentleman taking a crowbar and hammer to the perimeter of the entrance. He's attached spikes to the door and ran rope through those spikes to a winch in an attempt to bring the massive stone door down. The whole time we hear a synth score driving up the suspense.
Unnecessarily, by the way.
The synth score is unnecessary?
The whole scene is ridiculous, but okay.
Well, I was going to say the beginning is reminiscent of another movie that you and I have seen recently that also takes place in Mexico, about unearthing something that you shouldn't. And it's Demonoid. Do you remember that movie? We saw it within the last 2-3 months.
You're going to have to refresh my memory. There's been a lot of pandemic horror.
Yeah.
I will say that it sounds very familiar.
It's about the evil hand, right? They unearth...
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right, yeah. So they unearth a tomb, and then something with an evil hand, and they keep chopping it off, and it's like one by one they keep killing somebody. So I don't remember too much about it. It was an okay movie. But it had a similar beginning where it takes place in Mexico, and they're unearthing something. So at first the winch doesn't work, and he goes back with a crowbar some more. We start to hear the door come loose. Then all of a sudden there's an explosion from behind the door, and then the silliest over-animated spirit bursts out from the entrance, and the door falls on the man and kills him. Mm-hmm. Right. What did you think of that animated spirit thing?
I thought the animated spirit, that was kind of what I was expecting, that level of quality for the spirit. I thought that it was interesting that they made it sound like a baby screaming when it escaped. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. The imagery itself, whatever kind of CGI they used or whatever was noticeably low budget is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It had a real Birdemic feel to it.
Birdemic. The spirit leaves the cave tomb and goes off into the night. The spirit is shot like the demons in the Evil Dead series. You know, that whole camera panning, low to the ground, moving left and right quickly. We hear many voices chanting, yelling words and phrases, and that, like you said, like the baby like crying, which we'll find out a little bit later. Eventually, the red animated spirit heads toward an abandoned building, and then we get the title card. So it's a pretty good entrance, pretty good intro scene.
I guess.
You weren't impressed.
Well, I had some notes for the director and for the script writing team. First of all, I went through a very cute archaeologist phase when I was younger. I sort of thought that archaeologists would basically be doing stuff like in Jurassic Park, where there's these huge discoveries all the time. Archaeologists generally don't go to old abandoned crypts that are in mine shafts and or tunnels at night alone with no backup and nobody knowing that they're there.
Yeah.
They also don't. Did they take down doors by themselves? Is there a reason this guy did he not have funding? Like how? That's the first thought that went through my head when I saw the opening scene. I was so distracted by this low budget archaeologist. I immediately thought he must be trying to Indiana Jones it. He's going to like take something. You see all these movies about, white people, quote unquote, exploring, finding cultural artifacts, stealing them. Is that why he's going in the middle of the night? Because he's ultimately going to do something that he doesn't want to have to make official, part of an official record? And then he dies, so it's like, oh, good. Like, this weirdo who's going into a tunnel at night to, is dead. That's sort of predictable.
But also, we're in Mexico.
Yes.
So he is Mexican.
Is he?
Well, we have no indication that he's white. Like, everybody other than his family that coming in is Mexican. But I get your point there. It was silly. And it actually comes in later in the movie when the archaeologist who replaces this one who dies does digging at night as well.
I wrote that down as a theme, that all these guys are going off alone to this crypt. And then the other thing was, why is there a crypt and then right next to it there's a doll factory? Like, they share a parking lot. Didn't someone say this isn't zoned? I don't know.
Yeah, that is really...
Come
this
get
is a
your
residential
dolls.
Zone or a... Yeah, that was silly.
Don't open this door, but let's invite little... Don't go in here. This is closed by order of the Department of Archaeology. But come on, little children, and get your cute little doll. I mean, not a good
they really set
use
them
of
up,
space.
didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
So, after the credits, we're on a plane and we meet the Wade family. It's a typical smart kid in 90s starter pack. Well-maintained hair, smart glasses, about 12-ish, reading a book called Why Bad Things Happen to Good Kids. So we're foreshadowing.
He's a snark. He's a snark.
What's a snark?
He's a snarky kid.
Oh, he's snark. Yeah. But I don't know if you noticed this. There's no blurb on the back cover though. It's definitely a movie prop, right?
Yeah.
So next we meet Marilyn Wade. She's a Kathleen Turner from Serial Mom lookalike who tells her son that they're almost at their destination. We meet Elliot Wade, and so we met Jimmy before, and now we've met Elliot and his daughter Jessica, who looks to be about 6 or so, would you say? I don't know.
I'm not good at estimating
children's ages. And she's writing letters to her friends back home. So we're supposed to think that she's very precocious, right? Did you write letters as a little girl?
I didn't proactively write.
Okay.
I mean, I would write thank you letters because after a birthday party if my mom insisted, but I didn't go about...
Yeah. Did you have dolls growing up? Like creepy dolls like this? all dolls are inherently creepy. It's more or less like on a scale, I would say.
Says the guy who has a gigantic... The doll collector himself.
I don't collect dolls, I collect figures.
Oh yeah, no, you're right.
It's different.
They're super cute though. Like
Michael Myers is...
the little boy version of him that you have.
I don't have a little boy version.
I thought you had like a child version of Michael Myers.
I have a small version of him, but it's Michael Myers, but it's not a child.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Moving on.
Anyways.
So did you have dolls growing up?
I had a bunch of dolls. I loved Barbie when I was a kid, so I had a bunch of Barbies. I also had my grandfather, Judge in Polish, got me these small dolls about, I want to say, maybe a foot high that had little crocheted dresses. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Oh, actually, I think I did have a doll very similar to the one in the movie where it might still be in my closet if you want to. No, you don't want to see it. It's at home. And it was actually on a stand. I think my dad got it. Mm-hmm. It was like a really nice doll. And so nice I never even used it. It was on a little doll stand and you just looked at it.
But I just remembered, you also had that creepy ass doll that you would hide around this house here that we started doing for a while. And now it's disappeared.
First of all, it's right over your right shoulder.
God damn it.
And it is not creepy. It's just that you think that a man with a bag of stars is
what is it?
Creepy.
Orphan or what kind of doll is it?
It's a storytelling guy.
Why does he have a rag type hair? Like
he's disheveled in an adorable way.
So you thought that it would
not,
be fun to hide it around the house on me so that I would find it in my underwear drawer or something, and then you're like telling me it's not creepy. You can't have it both ways, babe.
I can actually, first of all, have it however I want. We're in my office right now. But it wasn't creepy. It was only creepy that first time when I left for the weekend to go home and you found the doll staring at you in the spare bedroom.
Not fun.
That was awesome. I can't believe I accidentally did that. That was so cool of me.
Okay, so that was the extent of your dolls.
I had a Rainbow Bright. I had a lot of dolls in general, but the kind of doll like that where it has the open, like, I think that's the creepy doll where it has the open eyes looking straight at you. Those are the ones that like kind of seem like they might come to life.
Okay, so the dad then proceeds to show his daughter pictures of a doll that he'll be making in Mexico. So we know where they're headed and why. The dad seems excited and says they're going to be a huge success, and the daughter asks if they can go back to LA then. It's like, ouch, kid, read the room. Obviously your dad is writing, like, put all his hopes into this. They arrive in Mexico where a real estate agent is waiting for them with all his business papers and all the documentation he needs to be in the country. Next they arrive at the new family home and everyone is in a good mood. They meet Camilla, who's played by Lupe Antiveros, who is perhaps most famously known for playing Yolanda Saldivar, the woman who killed Selena in the movie Selena. Camilla is going to be their maid and nanny for the kids. Marilyn almost always looks uneasy with a worried look in her eye. Chris looks around their new digs and sees lots of books, to which Camilla says there's a lot of Mexican history in this house. It's a weird thing to say. I'm sure that's not going to come back at all.
Even the way they recorded it, you could tell. I felt like they re-recorded that line later. The way that the scene was set up, I remember they were coming in, like for the omniscient view from the rafters looking down.
Yeah.
And her voice was crystal clear, not like it was in the background or something, and she was behind him. And so I immediately wrote it down. History books will be important. Someone's going to use those as reference for demon slaying.
Yeah, do you think like they didn't realize it and then later on they're going to be like, wait, how did he know to look in those books? They're like, we'll just record some audio later. Is that what, that's what it feels like?
I don't know if it's that or, I mean, I heard that they re-record a lot of dialogue in a lot of movies. So, it's hard to get that shot and also get her voice and have it be. So maybe that was just kind of a plan, but I could also see it being a last minute, like, let's throw in some reference here for how these books got here.
Yeah. So Marilyn looks around the house and notices a life-size dollhouse out back. Why? Why would somebody build this?
You mean the life-size dollhouse close to the doll factory? That's so weird. I don't know why anyone would do that. This is a gigantic house, by the way. It's a 2-story house.
Do you think that they also bought, because they, as we'll discuss in a little bit, the factory that they bought was from an old woman who passed away who used to make dolls in there. Mm-hmm. Do you think the house is hers as well? Do you think that it was a package deal? I hadn't even thought of that because it was pre-furnished.
I didn't know if they were. First of all, I didn't think they bought the house. I thought they rented the house. Because it did come with all the furniture. I sort of thought that it was just this thing where there's this amazing, at the very beginning when the real estate agent, who by the way has a very different estimation of that old factory than the dad, is talking about these dolls and these cherished tones. And he is obviously really old, and he doesn't even say, well, my daughter loves her dolls. He talks about how he has all these memories. So I don't know if it's one of those things where when you live close to a dollhouse, like a renowned one where people just love the doll maker and they think she's awesome and they love the dolls and they have all these memories, if you're just more likely to have a dollhouse in your backyard. Just like if you, as you get further south, you're more likely to have a pool because the weather kind of permits for it. Like, I don't know. I wasn't sure. Did you find that weird? Like too contrived or...
I didn't think about it at the time. Just thinking about it now, I just think it's weird to have a dollhouse in your backyard. But you're right. Like maybe because it's so close to a doll factory, maybe the area is renowned for dolls, and so they just had that. So that makes sense now. Elliot takes himself and the kids to tour the doll factory, and you can tell already that Jessica's is a daddy's girl, and she has him wrapped around her fingers, which comes around later on. And as they pull up, we see that the factory is in fact the building that the spirit went into from the beginning, from earlier. Elliot seems nonplussed about the state of the building, like you were saying. The realtor, Mr. Estrella, says that the woman who owned the factory before made the highest quality dolls. Elliot says he was under the impression that the factory had been well preserved. And Mr. Estrella says, yes, we made sure not to touch anything since her death. Why, no one even comes up here anymore, which is pretty funny. I like that a lot. And he wasn't being like,
It wasn't a funny moment.
It wasn't a funny moment. It wasn't like a scam. He's like, see how I scammed you. He was like, legit, this is a place to be revered.
We would never touch this place. It's so hallowed ground-ish.
Yeah, which is funny. It's in its sincerity, you know.
Which is kind of funny because we were just talking about the placement of the crypt next to the dollhouse, but there are these two things that people are just like, hey, leave these things completely alone. Don't touch them.
Maybe it was maybe it was like some sort of attraction, because obviously that crypt was there for 1,000 years before this dollhouse was, and they knew what, and we're going to find out in a little bit what the crypt is, but they knew what it was when they built that factory, so maybe there was some sort of connection there that they wanted to make.
Yes, that's a possibility.
So,
whoa,
we're coming up with some stuff. There's writing, huh?
There's undertones.
Yeah. I think we're giving him more credit than his due, but that's fine. While Estrella gives Elliot and Chris a tour of the factory, Jessica comes upon a frog that she follows to another room. And then the frog just disappears, and we never hear about it again.
Yeah, its backstory was unclear. Its motivation?
I'm just saying, like, if she had found it in the room that she eventually gets to, but that's not even the case. The frog just leads her to the room in which the dolls are, and that's it.
I actually have a note about animals.
Okay, let's hear it.
I have a note specifically about how many times animals seem to be independent actors, sort of. About the dog that guards the crypt, the frog. There's several instances where there's dogs, cats, and I had actually not written down about the frog, but there's several instances where animals are actually furthering the plot. In slight ways. They're either guarding or leading, and I found that really interesting. But maybe we can talk about it later when we see some more of those examples pop up.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Jimmy is walking around the factory and comes across the archaeological site where the demon came from.
And that's actually, I think, and I actually didn't write down exactly which scene it was because Jimmy has kind of a fascination with the crypt, as I assume most little kids might. But I think that's the first instance that I noticed where there was an animal kind of taking control. So there was a dog, a small, scruffy dog that was, I think, over the crypt somehow. Like there was like a little hill behind the door.
Yeah. And
sort of like disturbed some pebbles, and they fell on Jimmy's head, and so he backed up and he went away from the crypt door. I think the dog may even have barked at him.
Okay. Like I remember that. I remember that dog, but I didn't put that together. Next, we see Jessica has found a stash of Dolly Dearest dolls in the room she was in, and her dad finds her, and she picks out a specific doll that she wants, which he promptly gives her and says it's his first sale. As they are leaving, they honk the horn for Jimmy to make it back to the Jeep. He asks what the site is, and Mr. Estrella tells him it's Mayan ruins, that it's a very important find. Jimmy says that they studied the Mayans last semester, that they're pretty cool dudes.
So I have a couple of notes here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I found it really interesting that he called it the Mayan ruins when we find out later, like I didn't put this together until after the fact, but it's not actually a Mayan site. And it seemed kind of odd to me because it feels like there's all this focus on the people who live in this town have this appreciation for the history. There are history books in this town, history books in the house that they move into, and the cook slash nanny slash housekeeper points them out right away to this little boy. And then they go to this factory, and the real estate agent is talking about how they preserved this factory, which has now got the biggest, thickest layer of dust because they've quote unquote preserved it and not touched it. And then he talks about the Mayan ruins, which is not true. It's a completely different, honestly, I was a little unclear about that. I wasn't sure if it was like kind of a precursor to the Mayans, if it was a separate tribe from the Mayans, completely, but it seems like he's basically giving misinformation, either because he doesn't know, which seems kind of unlikely given how much they emphasize, this history and how important it is, or because he's maybe glossing over, maybe he's just using a term that he thinks the white family's going to know. They'll know who the Mayans are.
Yeah. Estrella says last week someone was crushed to death there, so Elliot doesn't want Jimmy going over there. Actually, the work's been suspended until a new archaeologist arrives. At night, Marilyn is putting Jessica to bed, and Jessica is not having anything to do with her mom. You could tell, already, we know she's a mother, she's a daddy's girl, and she just doesn't like her mom very much.
I didn't get that.
That's the feeling I got.
I got a slightly different feeling that she had a basically good relationship with both of her parents, but daddy spoils her, and mom enforces the rules.
I could see how you would see that from your own personal experience.
Oh, really? Is that how you... Well, but...
I know, I agree with you that daddy is definitely... Sorry to interrupt you. That daddy is definitely the softie, and he is spoiling her, yeah. And it's actually a plot point.
But I noticed that in their relationship in the beginning, where she's talking about how they're going to be unpacking and won't that be fun? And, they have this little kind of interaction where you can tell unpacking is not going to be fun, but the daughter's kind of okay with it and is going along with it. And then that contrasts to how things change as the movie progresses.
Jessica says, don't forget to say goodnight to Dolly, which Marilyn does. Then Jessica sits up in bed and says, goodnight to Dolly. You're going to be my only playmate.
And that's something that I noticed as well, that there seems, somehow this doll, I think, chooses her, maybe because she's lonely. Dad chose to come down to, buy this factory. So he's excited about this. Jimmy's really interested in the crypt, and maybe he's looking at it too, in a too focused a way. But here's this little girl who's lonely. She's the weak link. She's the weak link when they come and explore that factory. So it almost feels like the doll picks her because it knows that she's the weak link, and also the easiest way to infiltrate the family. Because there's a lot of mention about the loneliness. I actually thought in the beginning, in one of those opening scenes where we're introduced to the family and they're in the airplane, and the mom and dad are talking about how many letters this little girl is writing, and mom says, she does it. You're seeing so many letters because she's actually rewriting some of them. It's not that she has so many friends; it's that she's rewriting letters.
Good point.
That it felt like maybe there was this sort of subtle protest of moving down to Mexico. The son was being really vocal. Jimmy is being really vocal. He's reading this book about bad things happening to good kids, and he's got that in your face, I don't want to be here. And the little girl is writing all these letters to her friends saying, I'm lonely. I'm not going to have any friends, Dad. I'm getting rid of, all these people are going out of my life. I sort of felt like it was maybe a way to be manipulative, and you definitely see that she has that capacity for manipulation, later, and sort of twisting, the heartstrings of Dad. And then later, she mentions that Dolly is going to be her only playmate when her dad gives her the doll in the factory. And then she brings it up again when she's going to bed. So it feels like, even though she's being way more subtle about it, it feels like she's really significantly impacted by the move. She's sad, she's lonely, she doesn't think she's going to have any friends, but she doesn't speak up and say it the way that Jimmy does, where he's really like, when are we moving back to LA, or when is that going to happen, or what, whatever might happen. Jimmy's more direct, but Jessica, I think, is more subtle in trying to steer the family to move back to where all of her friends are.
Yeah. So then the creepy synth music plays as Jessica goes to sleep. Then we see Dolly slowly move her neck and look at the camera. This is a good part. I like this a lot. And it was well done. It's not too much. And this is the first inclination we get that the doll has been possessed. The next day, Camilla is cooking soup and says that the vegetables come from her brother's garden and she can get them for Marilyn for a good price. Then she also says that her sister is a nun. This is kind of interesting, right? Like, this is kind of random and convenient. I don't know if it's... I'm reading a book about the history of the Halloween franchise and all the scripts that were written for it that weren't produced. Some of them, right? Because there's hundreds of scripts that weren't produced, but these are like the major ones. And then I've read another book about script writing. And so when you read that stuff, you kind of see the little mechanisms that they drop in for a movie that are going to come up later on or whatever. Foreshadowing. But like, for example, like if she had said that she only had one sister and she was a nun, you'd be like, okay, that's a little much. So they add that she has a brother who makes gardens, who has vegetables, and so that she's cooking at that time those specific vegetables, just to bring it all together. And then, so the sister is a nun, so obviously this is going to come back later on.
But Camilla actually, I feel like they paint her very religious, though.
Yes.
Also,
that is true.
Yeah. She has the crucifix on her around her neck. She has the rosary that she keeps on her wrist, and then she has the shrine, or something, in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe she's just a particularly devout religious person.
Comes from a religious family, because she says that they're so proud of their sister for being a nun.
Yes.
Yeah. Jessica says she'll be playing out back with Dolly. So Marilyn looks at her walking to the dollhouse, and the way Jessica is holding the doll, Dolly is looking back at Marilyn, and it's very creepy. It's a good shot. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that.
So she's walking away from her. She's holding Dolly in her hands, and the doll's looking over Jessica's shoulder at Marilyn. Obviously not blinking or anything, but it's great. I like the shot a lot. Marilyn looks at the letters Jessica has written and is concerned. They look like some of the Mayan, quote-unquote Mayan glyphs from earlier in the movie. Later, Marilyn is unpacking and hears the pitter-patter of footsteps and calls to Jessica that they're almost ready to leave. Then the camera glides to the right with Marilyn, and we see that there's a mirror, and we as the audience see that there's a Dolly Dearest doll in the reflection of the mirror, but Marilyn can't see it. Then the camera glides to the left with Marilyn again, and then she walks back to the right again, and this time Dolly is gone, and we hear the footsteps run away. What did you think of this?
I thought, as soon as I saw that mirror glide into the frame, and obviously once you see Dolly, you know that Dolly's going to move. I thought,
yeah,
the movie is Dolly Dearest. You know that the doll is going to move, and this is going to be our first indication that the doll is not just creepy, that the doll is actually possessed. And so I was prepared for that.
Yeah, but it's still cool when you see it.
I liked how they did it kind of subtly, where they had the little pitter patter of footsteps, and so you're wondering, is it the doll, is it the girl?
Yeah. So then Marilyn asks if anyone is there, but no one responds. The next scene, Marilyn and the kids are coming home, and we hear a priest saying prayers over the house in Spanish, and Jessica freaks out in the back of the car. It feels like the kid from The Babadook, which, if I know you haven't seen it, but she's just yelling and just screaming at the top of her lungs.
I just made this connection when we were talking about that. I don't think Mom is particularly concerned about the fact that she heard footsteps and then didn't see her daughter.
Yeah.
So it seemed like she was... Because I used to do that when I was a kid. I would hide from my mom, because if she was calling for me, like on a weekend or something, it meant there was a task that needed to be done. And so I thought it was really interesting that she just assumes that Jessica's in the house, that the footsteps she heard were her daughter's, and that Jessica's just not responding to her, and it doesn't even freak her out at all.
Yeah. I would be frustrated if I called out and nobody responded.
But you were saying that like they have this weird relationship between mom and daughter.
Yeah, she's probably like, oh, she's ignoring me again.
Yeah.
She gets out of the car and Jessica is still screaming and gives an evil eye to the priest and to Camilla, who was the one who called them to bless the house. Marilyn notices how she's looking at the priest. Jessica asks for Dolly. As she's walking with her, she looks back menacingly at Camilla.
Another religious thing with Camilla.
Right. And Camilla is really concerned about at this point. She's like, what the hell was that? You know, she thinks something bad or evil is happening already. This is her first inklings of it. Next, we're at a University Department of Archaeology, spelled wrong again. And we meet Professor Resnick. The student gives him photos from Hapala, the site by the factory. So this is Rip Torn, and in his Mexican accent, he says he was friends with the man who was killed earlier, and he's leaving immediately to the site. So let's talk about this. Rip Torn is cast as a Mexican archaeologist. Okay, so this is 1991. This happens a lot, and it still happens now to this day. He, I think, was in brownface because either that or he had a really deep tan. And I don't remember Rip Torn in any of the movies that I've seen him having this really deep tan. Something was weird there. And I refuse to call him Dr. Resnick. I will be calling him Rip Torn the rest of the time here. And his Mexican accent is terrible. And it goes in and out.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting casting. I understand that would happen a lot, where they would have kind of a bigger name come in for, to try to, for advertising purposes, but he did not do the best job. And I didn't notice the brown face. I kind of assumed that he just got super tanned for the part, tanning bed or something, or spray tan or something like that. But I hadn't even thought about brown face, that maybe he was just...
Yeah, I mean, if it's a spray tan, then it'd be brown face. I don't know if it's if it's a full-on tan, like if he earned it himself, I don't know if that's brown face. Maybe it is, but he's also wearing guy liner.
I think that's kind of his look, though. I think he has that pronounced dark line around his eyes in a lot of movies. I feel like he does that to be dramatic.
It's just funny to me every time I see it.
It still looks ridiculous.
It's very 60s.
But yeah.
And we saw a documentary or a behind-the-scenes making of the movie, and his co-workers or the actors that had to work with him didn't have good things to say about it. Do you remember specifically what we're talking about?
I know exactly what
Do you want to say it?
Well, first of all, they commented on his accent.
Yeah.
They mentioned that he was really hard to work with. So the interview was with the actor who played the doll in the later scenes where the doll's really mobile. And also Marilyn, I forget the actress's name, but
Denise Crosby.
She was also interviewed, and so Denise Crosby mentioned that he was really hard to work with, and it seemed like she was trying to, in the most professional way possible, mention that the director had a really hard time working with Rip Torn, that he was pompous, that he didn't take direction very well, and that Maria Elise, the director, had to try to find some soft way to deal with him because he just wasn't having it. He just thought he was a big name and didn't need to listen to anyone. And then I was gonna say then the I don't know,
Ed Gale,
who played the doll, also mentioned that he was really used to trying to have this kind of doing this physical work of playing the doll, playing a smaller person, and how he was trying to pull, I don't know if it was a punch or a kick or something like that. And Rip Torn wanted him to just really go at it and not pull any punches, and said it in a really cocky, kind of condescending way.
Yeah. How that story finishes, Rip Torn asked him to try to actually trip him. And it's in the scene later on where he has to be tripped. And he does, and he tripped him, and Rip Torn fell, and he was angry about it. The actor said, "How about now? Not hard enough?" So that was pretty funny. And he actually said that he still owns the dress that he used in the movie, and he showed it to us, which was really cool. So back at the Wade residence, Marilyn and Elliot are discussing Jessica's outburst. Elliot says he's taking Jimmy to the factory so they can have mommy and daughter time. Marilyn looks out and sees that Jessica is out in the dollhouse. She goes to get Jessica, and as she's walking, we see two distinct shadows, which was really two distinct shadows in the dollhouse. As Jessica's giggling, Jessica says, "That's funny. Why are you doing that?" Marilyn tries to eavesdrop on the conversation. As she opens the door, she sees it's just her and Dolly. Jessica says that Dolly said that we're going to like it here. Then Marilyn takes Jessica back to bed. We see Camilla looking at them from the kitchen, and she starts praying to that shrine that you were talking about, hiding it from the family because she suspects something. The next day, Jimmy trespasses onto the dig site, and for some reason, this is what you were talking about earlier, a cute little dog with that bandana around its neck is there.
Oh, so I got it mixed up.
Yeah, but that's fine. But yeah, that's when it happens. So it's two animals right now.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy finds some blueprint plans and takes them. Back at the house, wait, that also never comes back. He just stole those blueprint plans. Well, I guess, yeah, because later on, the Rip finds him in there, and that's how he was able to get to her again. Okay. Back at the house, Marilyn is dressed for a cocktail party. Like, her outfits are always
amazing. She always looks beautiful. Like she's
gardening here.
Like she has Audrey Hepburn as her role model. Her style icon is kind of what came to mind.
Yeah, she's serving looks the whole movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I actually had a note right around here, which is that there's a lot of going to the factory that doesn't include Mom. Mom is not part of that whole world. I noticed that a couple of times where the kids would go. The daughter jumps in the car. She's so excited. Jimmy's excited too. He's going. They're exploring around the area. Even when Jimmy and Dad go alone, I feel like Jessica definitely would have gone, but Dad wanted her to stay home with her mom.
Mm-hmm.
But Mom is definitely at home. Home is her, like, Dad's home base is the factory. Mom's home base, it feels like, is over and over represented as being the house.
That's a good point. I don't think, besides the opening scene or in the beginning where she's shown in the factory, like they're doing a tour of it or whatever, mm-hmm. After that, I don't think she's in the factory at all. Even at the end, she goes around it, but mm-hmm. she doesn't go back inside. That's a good point. So she's in this cocktail dress and she intrudes on Camilla praying at her shrine, and she doesn't seem to be happy about Camilla doing that. So she walks outside and sees Jessica drawing some more glyphs and Jessica says Dolly told her to draw them. She says she's been waiting for a little girl just like me. Okay. At this point, I'm
Creepy.
Getting rid of the doll. You're no longer allowed to have the doll in the house. The doll stays out in the dollhouse, yeah.
Where we'll amass power.
That's
doll
fine.
Comes back with a little army of.
That's fine. We'll put a lock on it, and it's its own little thing out there. I don't know. Creepy dolls, creepy kids. I don't like them.
Okay, so I want to interject here that I don't think that's creepy at all.
The doll saying she's looking for a girl just like me?
I don't think that's an immediate indicator. It's obviously an indicator to us because we know it's a movie. But I think you've heard the story that my mom has told you and me. She loves the story about how I told her there was a man in the house and that he went down into the basement.
Tell this story.
So we lived in this really small town. Actually, we lived 6 miles outside of a really small town. Our nearest neighbors were like a quarter mile away. And unbeknownst to little 5-year-old me, oh my God, I was probably about the same age as Jessica.
Jesus Christ.
Unbeknownst to me at this time, in that very same area of Wisconsin, there were a series of murders. And actually, a woman's body was found maybe half a mile away from our house in the woods. I don't know any of this. And so one day, I'm, at home with my mom, just kind of playing around, doing my own thing. And she's going around the house. And when she comes back and outside in the garden and stuff, when she comes back inside, I tell her that while she was outside, a man came in through our back door.
Jesus Christ.
And in our old house, This is the creepy part. You'd come in, there was a back door, there's like a back patio, and when you came in, it went right down into a root cellar. Not a basement, it was like an actual cellar. The walls were like muddy. It was very clear that they had originally been like, it was part of a farmhouse. It was actually really creepy. There was one where the deep freezer was, that whole room, the walls were all like dirt. And so I told my mother this, and she didn't know if I was telling the truth or if I was making up a story about this.
Yeah.
And she asked me questions, and I answered them about the man and how I guess I sounded really certain. And so she calls my dad, who's trying to build his practice and is working long hours in Wisconsin. And, she's freaking out. I thought when she said, Dolly said to do this, that sounds like a really classic little girl thing. Like, I want to do this. I'm being subtle and manipulating you. But I'm going to say that there's a different reason I'm doing it. Like, I'm just writing letters to my friends. Letters on letters on letters.
What if that man never left that house?
I like how you're stuck there.
You hear stories of people finding people living in their house, like in between walls and stuff, or behind.
Hope my mother never hears this. See, the thing is that in that old house, I don't know if you ever went into it.
Did you? No.
Okay.
Not after you said that story.
Well, when you go down the stairs are open. They're just like...
Yeah.
And there's a little space below the stairs.
Like every horror movie has ever had.
Where the guy sits and he grabs your legs as your ankles as you're going down the stairs.
Yeah.
I hated going down.
Why wouldn't people... First of all, why do they build them like that? Second of all, why wouldn't you just put a piece of wood behind there? Just for safeties. Just to be safe.
Well, okay, the people who are most scared about it are probably the kids, and the people who would have to make that change are the adults. You've got the wrong demographic that you're catering to.
I'm just saying.
It was creepy. Oh, but you know what? I almost wonder if it was like a thing because the ice cream was in the deep freeze. So if we wanted ice cream, we had to go down into the creepy ass basement, into the cellar.
Okay.
And then...
That's some emotional warfare right there.
After you went down the creepy stairs where someone could grab your legs from underneath it, then you had to walk right past that creepy understairs area and go to the deep freeze room, which was a separate room. There was no light switch. There was like a pull chain, and the pull chain was kind of in the room. So you had to walk into this even darker, creepier room with no windows to turn on the light. To get the ice cream.
In that house.
That man is still in the house
to this day.
Yeah.
He dug himself a little alcove, a little area for himself, and he just lives there now.
Also, why I love ice cream.
So then, Camilla comes to clean up the table, and Jessica reacts badly to the cross that she's wearing. Camilla comes to clean up the table, and Jessica reacts badly to the cross she's wearing, and she pushes the dishes out of Camilla's hands. And says these two words. Do you remember what they are?
No. I know it was in Sansia, but I don't know.
Yeah, so the words are Quinta Quintero. So Camilla is very disturbed by these words and says that they're in Sansia. She says, those spirits fly with the evil one, and then she walks away. Marilyn follows Jessica to the dollhouse and hears her having a conversation. When she walks in, Jessica says, what do you want?
So much going on in that one little scene.
Yeah. Very disrespectful.
Yep.
To the mom. And the mom doesn't really react to that. How would your mom react if you said that?
I don't know. It's interesting though because I feel like my mom would have been in a similar situation to Marilyn's character, which is that Dad wanted to move. So my dad moved to a small town in Wisconsin with my mom and with myself at the time. My sister wasn't born yet. And that was, it was a family decision, but a lot of the reason that they moved to Wisconsin instead of back to Chicago where my mom's family was because of my dad's practice. And then they just stayed there. And there was always this kind of conversation about would they at some point move back or not to Chicago or an area where there was more family or a bigger city. And so it's interesting watching this movie about a dad who moves his family to a whole different place.
Wow, you knew exactly what you were doing when you picked this movie.
I didn't even know that. I didn't, but it's so. I actually have notes about why are they moving? Like, how poor is he that he can't hire people to go down to this factory? But, anyways, but I thought it was really interesting, and I guess to me, like, it sort of. It seemed like Mom had read a book on what to expect if you're making big changes in your life. Your kids are going to act out. They're going to have temper tantrums. There's going to be this period of adjustment. It's going to be really hard. And, she didn't want to move either. So she's thinking, I don't want to move. I'm not happy about this either, but I'm an adult and I can handle it. But my daughter is 5 or 6 and she's alone. So, of course, she's throwing a temper tantrum and yelling at people. Mm-hmm. So, to me, a lot of that sort of covered it a lot. Where you know that Dolly is gaining control of the girl, but Mom doesn't know because this doesn't really seem that out of character of a little girl who's just been uprooted and moved away from everything she's known.
Yeah, and so here Marilyn says, don't use that tone with me. She says, why did you do that? And Jessica says, Camilla prays to the spirits, and her spirits hate Dolly. It's like, okay.
Wait, did you catch that? She's basically talking about Christianity and calling Jesus a spirit.
I feel like that's bigger than I don't know what to do with that. What do you mean?
So Jessica is talking about how Camilla prays to the spirits and that the spirits are against Dolly. So she's talking about Camilla praying at the little shrine that she has to Jesus because she's a Christian. And it's Mexico, so she's probably Catholic, right? So that's just really interesting because Dolly is telling this little girl what to say, and Dolly is describing basically Jesus as a spirit. Mm-hmm. And I actually had this little note about how, in a way, it was like there are these two spirits. Jesus is sort of on a level playing field. And, as a Christian, you think Jesus is like the creator of the universe and all this stuff. But in this movie, the way that the dolls or the spirit is framing it is Jesus is a God. I'm a God. We're kind of on equal playing field, and we're just fighting. We're having a fight. We're trying to gain control, but we're kind of equal combatants.
I gotcha. Okay. See, in my head, it's all fake. So I was like, what do you mean one fake thing and another fake thing? But I see in the world of this movie, right?
In the world of this movie, it was interesting that they reframed Christianity as being less than what most people think of it as.
Through the eyes of Dolly. Like, that's how Dolly thinks of it as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to assume that might be, in that world, obviously it's not just, there's this older spirit that is like fighting against Christians, like in a very real way. It is sort of, anyways, it's interesting. I thought that was a really interesting take. That
I definitely didn't pick up on that. Marilyn asks her where she heard those words. Jessica says Dolly told her. Marilyn says stop saying that, and she wants Jessica to apologize to Camilla. Next, Jessica gives her a very insincere apology and walks out. Marilyn asks Camilla to make her religious observances more private. Camilla says she spoke to her nun sister and she thinks it's best if they find someone else because she's leaving. I like this part. Well, I wish she had left because, as we're going to find out, something else happens. But I like that Camilla kept her power. She's like, you know what? These are my religious practices. I am going to continue to do them. I'm not going to let you tell me that I can't do them. Also, I'm trying to save your family. Doesn't seem like you're interested in that. So I'm going to bounce,
I thought that was like the classic, like the get out of the house moment where the family's like, oh, it's so creepy and there's little voices whispering, but I'm going to stay here and pretend everything's fine.
Yeah.
I did like the Camilla. I mean, I think if she probably would have left the next day.
I wish she would have left that night.
Yeah.
Because Camilla is one of my favorite characters. At night, Elliot tucks Jessica into bed. She says she doesn't think Mommy is very happy there. And then Daddy agrees. She's a little bitch. This little girl has him wrapped around her finger. It's it's kind of sad to see because, you know, when you're in a new place, like you're saying, in your experience, their lives are uprooted, and the father's away all the time at work, so the mom is the ones that's at home taking care of the kids, and they have to be united front. But the dad's, you can already tell that there's cracks in that. The dad's already on the little girl's side, which definitely helps the evil spirit grab hold of Jessica more, I think.
I actually had a note about that.
Okay.
About how because I was trying to figure out, and we can talk about this later, but what the doll's like motivation or ultimate goal was, because I think that's one of the parts that didn't seem particularly clear in the end. But I did notice that there was a lot of pitting people against each other, and I wrote down, there's Camilla versus mom, there's mom versus dad, there's Jessica versus mom, and eventually there's Jimmy versus Jessica. There's like all these instances where these people, if they had just worked together, they would have been able to knock this out. But part of the power comes from finding the weak links and then like kind of separating everybody so they're not on a team. They're just fighting each other, and they don't have time. They don't have time to band together.
Yeah. And there's more, like if you expand outside of the family, there's Rip Torn and Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And then I think that's the one.
There's the real estate agent and dad.
I think that was more the dad. The real estate agent wasn't putting up a fight, right? He was just like that funny scene where he says, "Who did all the business, the charts and the analysis and all that?" And he said, "Oh, I did. I copied from an American business book or something like that." So I don't think he was putting up a fight very much.
It's just, it was just kind of interesting though, because that guy could have helped him. He obviously knew a lot of the history of the town, but immediately Dad's ticked off at him.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't want anything to do with him.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interpersonal conflicts. As she says goodnight to Dolly, we hear Dolly get up and disappear. Jessica wakes up and starts calling for and looking for Dolly. So we see the parents leave for dinner. Jessica starts looking for Dolly around the house, calling for her. We hear tiny footsteps first, then we see...
Oh, the tiny footsteps.
Yeah, the doilied feet fast walking. Then we see the actual body walking away in shadow. No animatronics here, it was just the actor, which was kind of cool. Again, she follows Dolly. She sees Camilla ironing clothes and sneaks past. Then she sees Dolly outside walking into the dollhouse. There's a very creepy voiceover saying, "Jessie, follow me." I did not like that at all. Which she does, and Camilla hears the door open and follows her. I think I had notes about this later on, but we could talk about it now. The voice that's coming from...
I hated that voice.
No. The voice itself is creepy and weird. But what I wanted to talk about specifically of this voice was the vocabulary or the way it talked. Like, this is 1,000-year-old or older demon spirit, right? But it's talking like any normal person would. I mean, right now it just said, "Jessie, follow me," which isn't so much. But later on in the movie, she uses full sentences, and she even has some one-liners that are like, "Okay, are you from like 86 BC, or are you from like 1986 or 1991 or whatever?" You know? So that's just a little bit off-putting. Did you catch that at all?
That wasn't a flag for me. I sort of figure 1,000-year-old spirit can figure out English. It's a devil spirit, so...
But I would understand if it possessed a human or some, you know, because then you have access to the brain of that human and you're able to use their vocabulary. I would have no problem with that.
That's how spirits work?
It's in every science book, sweetie. Look it up.
Oh, wow. The sweeties are coming out. That's interesting.
But
let's reflect on that.
And my podcast is canceled now. But the spirit took over an empty doll. So where's it getting it from?
I think that I just don't have a problem with that. I've seen that device in a lot. Actually, what I'm thinking, I've seen it in fantasy books where, like, I used to be a really big fan of the Renche series, Last of the Renche, and there were scenes where animals or other things were, like, animated, basically, and they were animated by spirits. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, maybe it was an animal, or I think in one case it was maybe a sword or something like that. And it just, you don't question it, really. It's just like, it just happens. I don't know how they get the words. I don't know how this spirit, who obviously didn't know English in the first place, but I'm just not even going to question it.
Yeah, I have no problem with the spirit taking over a doll and animating it to life. No problem. It's the English that's the problem.
It's the language barrier.
Yeah. So Jessie follows the doll, and Camilla hears the door open, and she follows her. As Jessie gets closer to the window, we see Dolly's tiny hand opening the squeaky door wider for her. And that's a very jarring image. I didn't like it at all. And it keeps saying, Jessica. And then Jessica seems to be in a kind of a daze here. Just as she gets to the door, Camilla calls her back. And then she walks and grabs Jessica by the arm and tells her to get back into the house. Jessie puts up a bit of a fight. Jessica, doesn't matter. Puts up a bit of a fight, but it's no use. As they get to the house door, the wind closes it shut. So Camilla has to walk around the front, and that's also locked. So she then screams for Jimmy to open the door, but he can't hear her since he has his headphones on. So next she tries the window, and that's also closed. So she goes to the basement cellar doors and she gets in that way.
The cellar. I'm telling you, all the creepy stuff happens in the cellar.
That is true. Yeah, because of course she does, right? That's the only way she can get in, is through the creepy entrance. Below, it's dark and dingy, and she stumbles for a light, and when she finds one, she reveals the doll maker's leftover doll parts. Arms, legs, eyes.
That was so creepy.
Creepy, but also, hey, Dad, what are you doing? Maybe move these to your cellar, to your office.
Remember how you were saying that maybe there was a package deal, the house and the factory?
Yeah, so
Why were there doll parts back there otherwise, unless it was a package thing?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it has to be a doll, a package deal. Next, we see Dolly's small hands closing and locking the cellar door and walking down the stairs. Very creepy. And Camilla backs into a box of doll heads, which falls on her. There's a lot of backing up into boxes or into shelving units. Because that's in this whole movie, that's the only way that a doll can be on a human's level, you know? Mm-hmm. She goes up the stairs to try the door, and it's locked. As she's going down, she comes across a roller skate that looks like it was set on the stairs for her to walk on and fall, which was really fucked up by that doll, right? Mm-hmm. And then she picks it up and looks around. Behind her, we hear screeching as Dolly lunges at her from behind the stairs. Again, those open stairs.
Yes.
Yeah. Camilla yells and falls backwards from fright. On the floor, a doll eye rolls towards her. Then Dolly appears from behind her and stabs her. There's a very creepy synth demon laugh here. Camilla gets up and looks for a way to escape. We see Dolly pick up a shard of some sort, and we hear like this really great choir music, like chants coming. Camilla turns on a light, and as she does, Dolly lunges at her and cuts her. Camilla falls back and hangs onto the light cord she just turned on. She falls into a well and electrocutes herself. You okay?
You are telling... So, first of all, like you were talking about the roller skate.
Yeah.
I did not see that. And I know that I didn't see that because I could tell this was going to be an icky scene. And so I'm pretty sure...
You close your eyes.
I looked away, got on my phone.
Yeah.
Not paying attention to this creepy shit about to go down. And what is that? It's not really a well. It was like a gigantic, like, sink. It was almost like
It was filled with water.
It was filled with... Yeah.
I feel like it has a word, but I don't know what it is. And I've seen it in other movies that take place outside of America. So I don't know if it's just something that Americans don't have because we have access to indoor plumbing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how that could be their water source if it's not even covered. Like, if you're going to be using it as a drinking water, you should maybe cover it. But I don't know. It was really weird. But this is a really nice scene here with intercut scenes of the actress and a fake mannequin or whatever, a model, in the water. And she's just like, you know, she's being electrocuted. It's really good. I like it. Was this so you're saying, I was going to ask you, was that scary? I know the lead up to it was scary, but the actual, were you able to look at her in the water?
Okay, so this is a good distinction between what scares me and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. The idea of a creepy ass doll leaving roller skates on stairs and jumping at you and trying to kill you with, you know, little tiny knives. Where do they even find it? That is terrifying. That is so terrifying. Uh-huh. So all that lead up where she's scared and she's nervous and she's getting hurt, but she still has a chance to get out of that cellar. Terrifying. The part where she's actually dying painfully in the water, not scary at all. I'm like, okay, this is over. Like, she's definitely dead, and you know, this is just fake.
R.I.P. Camilla. So next we see Jessica sitting on the steps outside where Camilla left her, and we hear Dolly's sinister laughter, and it starts to thunder. She sees Dolly walking back to the dollhouse and says, "Jessie, now we can play." Okay? So, again, the language thing here. But okay.
I didn't like that voice to begin with. It sort of felt like they got the actor, who was a man, to do the voice. It didn't sound...
What's it?
It's supposed to be a doll, right? If we assume that the spirits can mimic English, which is kind of the insinuation, mm-hmm. then why can't they mimic a little girl, which is what you'd expect? Like, it's purporting to be a doll. Why isn't it pretending to be a cute little doll voice?
Yeah, it feels for the audience's benefit.
It sort of seems like if they went halfway with it. Mm-hmm. If you're going to assume that this spirit can speak English, then assume it can sound cute and tiny and feminine.
But this is very good doll movement here by the special effects department that did the animatronics. Because there's kind of like, obviously they have some scenes in which they need a little person. I hope that's the right term that they like to use. A little person, the actor that we talked about earlier, they'll use him, and then at other times they'll have the animatronic doll. But I think I'm going to be saying that to you now, like, when I try to scare you in the house. Hilary, now we can play.
It doesn't sound creepy when you say it.
All right.
Maybe it's because of your long, flowing, luscious hair.
So, yeah, they know how I look. Well, you know, if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, you'll know how I look. So, Jessie smiles and walks to the dollhouse. She seems to be walking just like Dolly did. Did you notice that? How she was walking like very stilted movement. It was really weird.
I didn't write it down, but I think I did notice that this like slowly dollification of Jessica.
Yeah, and I put it somewhere other than notes, but I just ask it here. So, is the doll also possessing Jessica?
Yes.
Is that what you took from it?
I don't want to, you know, spoilers. I don't want to do any spoilers, but basically, yes, that's what I thought, is that the doll is basically getting in her... I sort of felt like it was kind of a more powerful version of that one friend that always helps you get into trouble, and your look starts to change with them a little bit, and you sort of start to have the same mannerisms as them, and you start to do things that they do. It sort of felt like the bad influence friend, except obviously instead of it being a regular human, you know, regular girl like friend, it was an evil spirit who was way more manipulative and powerful and influential.
Yeah, it definitely starts to exert its power or its influence over Jessica as the movie goes on. So as soon as she enters the dollhouse, Dolly swings the door closed. The parents come home and Marilyn finds Jimmy asleep, but they can't find Jessica. While trying to light a candle, Marilyn tries 3 times to strike a match and then gives up. And we were talking about this earlier or a couple days ago. It reminded me of those infomercials where the simplest task is like extremely hard. It's all grayed out. It's like you tried 3 times and you went really quickly. You didn't even do it right and you just gave up. Mm-hmm. So I guess maybe it just shows that she was nervous, but like, come on.
It's like those situations in horror films where they run up the stairs and the whole audience is screaming, "Don't go up the stairs!" But it's like, I heard someone talking about that. It's like humans have a tendency to go up because like prehistoric humans, whatever, up tended to be safer. So it's instinctual. Like our rational brain isn't thinking, what am I going to do when I get up to the top of the stairs? Our brain is thinking, I just need to get higher because higher is safer.
Higher ground.
Yeah.
Plus, if you have balanced landing, it'll work out.
A DVD reference. Sweet.
Yeah, Dead by Daylight reference for all those Dead by Daylight heads. So Elliot came home with Marilyn, and he's the lights are out, so he goes downstairs to see if it's a break or something. So while standing in a pool of water, Elliot decides, like the genius he is, to reach into the well and grab a power line. As he does, Camilla...
So smart.
Yeah. As he does, Camilla's body pops up out of the water, and simultaneously, Marilyn realizes that Jessica is in the dollhouse with this raging storm that is happening.
Did you get the whole baptism thing with Camilla?
Whoa.
I wrote down a baptism gone wrong.
Wow, yeah. I mean, you're baptized at birth, and she was baptized at her death.
And did you, like, she didn't just pop up. Like, she didn't just, bob to the surface. Mm-hmm. She sort of, like, attacked him.
Yeah, it did, for movie magic, it did look, for that one good jump scare, it did look like she attacked him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sort of felt like she was being held down under the water. Like she wasn't just being electrocuted. Like, she didn't just get electrocuted. They went to the trouble of, like, keeping her under the water as a surprise attack.
Do you mean in the production of the movie, or do you mean, like, the spirit held her down underwater?
I think the spirit held her down because she should have been floating on the surface otherwise.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Or also, they just didn't care about physics and just wanted that jump scare.
Why can't it be both?
Why can't it be both, yeah. Also, why isn't the dollhouse the first place that anybody looks for Jessica for the rest of this movie?
I don't know.
Like, they'll look literally everywhere else. They'll look in closets, but they won't look in the one place that she is, like, obsessed with. Yeah.
And why don't they just take the door off the dollhouse?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You hear about parents taking the door off their kids' rooms as a punishment.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, kind of really extreme. But, why aren't they taking... It's ridiculous.
Because as we'll see later on, or probably soon, there isn't a lock on the door. So what's the point of the door? So just take it off. Yeah, I agree. So next we hear creepy chanting as Marilyn runs to the back of the house. She notices Jessica is standing right outside the house, staring blankly out into the distance. Another creepy kid moment. This is why I asked if she's possessed as well, as we talked about. As we get closer to her, it is revealed that Dolly is standing right next to her and that they're both they're all both standing in the rain. Later, Jessica is in a kind of catatonic state, wrapped in a towel. So it's affecting her. And like we can see, like, little by little, she's more and more under the influence of the malevolent spirit. Mm-hmm. The next day, Marilyn is reading a book outside by the dollhouse, and she's unsettled by it. As the camera gets closer, we hear a demonic Dolly voice telling Jessica to lock the door. "That's a good girl," she says, and as Marilyn's listening. And then she says, "If she comes, don't open it. Do it, Jessica. Don't open it. No." So Marilyn tries to open the door and cannot, and she tells Jessica to open it, but she doesn't. Finally, she's able to open the door, to which she finds Jessica has styled her hair like Dolly's.
Okay. No, you tell me your impression of the haircut, because then I want to react to your reaction.
Well, I don't know what it takes. I think that that's a difficult look to pull off. So I don't think
that was your first thought.
No, like not a look to pull off.
I don't think that 5-year-old's pulling off those bangs.
Yeah, right. I said that wrong, but yeah, also she wasn't.
Get that girl restyled.
She wasn't. I meant like the actual physical styling of it. Like it's difficult to do. Is it not?
Yeah.
So that's what my thing was. Like I don't think a 6-year-old or whatever, how old she was, could actually do that.
Yes.
So then my second thought was, okay, so did the doll like whip it up? Like, oh shit. Like did the doll do it for her? Like physically do it for her? Like gabbing like girls and like at the salon and like doing her hair? I don't know. That's what I thought.
Okay, and here's the other thing. If we have a problem with the doll being able to imitate English or being able to know enough English to speak it, but we don't have a problem with her cutting those bangs, do you know how hard it is to cut and style bangs? And also the way that they are curled over her forehead. I tried to pull off bangs. It is really hard. It is not an easy thing. That gentle curl, no. That doll had to have done her hair, because there's no way a 6-year-old cut bangs that evenly. And there is no way that a doll who can't speak English, or shouldn't be able to speak English, can then somehow cut bangs. I feel like you have to have a problem with both or neither.
It's a physical thing for me. Like it's literal. Like it's a literal physical thing she can do. She can physically do the hair, whereas the English thing, it's not a physical. Like the language thing is not a physical thing. It's just my thing. We're gonna agree to disagree on this.
So you're saying that a doll or a spirit that's been like in hibernation for hundreds of years knows how to use scissors, knows how to cut bangs, and knows how to style them using what? A curling iron?
What's
probably?
your answer to it?
My answer is that it's a 900,000-year-old spirit, and it just kind of knows everything. Kind of the way that Jesus and Santa Claus watch over us all.
But what do you mean about the hair? How does she do the hair?
I think the spirit does the hair for her.
So she physically did it?
I think the spirit physically does the hair, and the spirit has abilities.
Don't you have to like sit under some sort of heating helmet or something for some look like that?
Wow. Your ignorance is just...
I don't know.
You probably need a roller or a curling iron or something. Right. But the thing is, okay, we just recently were talking about how, for whatever reason, they're putting Jesus and this 900,000-year-old spirit on the same footing.
Yeah.
Jesus is a spirit, then the demon is a spirit, and they're both. So if you assume, could you assume, like, in a world where Jesus exists, that Jesus could cut a girl's hair and style it? Because technically it's like this all-powerful, all-seeing, like that's kind of my thing too, is that the spirit, is contained in the crypt, but that doesn't mean it doesn't, once it gets out, it's sort of like it Googles everything it needs to know, with its demon Google spirit force thing. Yeah. And it has the knowledge of the culture that it gets released into. That's my answer to everything.
Okay.
Any anachronism or any issue that you have with the spirit, that's my answer.
It's basically Jesus. So
Jesus brain.
Yeah. So you're telling me, like, if I wanted cornrows, Jesus could hook me up.
I think Jesus has seen you with cornrows and would try to advise you against it.
No, I look
because
dope.
Jesus is a
I
cool
look
guy
dope.
like that.
Even my hairline is pushed further back, but it still looked up. Moving.
You like to get these little one-liners in, and then you're like, moving on.
So then Jessica says that Dolly doesn't like people coming in. And I'll be like, little girl, you don't pay any bills in this house.
You're going to say bitch?
I was going to call that little girl a bitch. Little girl, you don't pay any bills in this house. I will open whatever. You're lucky you don't sleep out here. I'll open whatever doors. I'll kick down doors. I don't give a fuck.
I can't wait till you're a father, right?
So she says Dolly doesn't like people coming in, and it's their house. And then Jessica says she doesn't want to go with her mom. Then she looks at Dolly as if she were instructed to do so. Then she looks back at her mom and apologizes for being rude. And then she turns on the kitty charm thick.
That was probably the least believable part of it for me, but okay.
Which part?
The part where she switches from unrepentant whore, like this is my place.
Whore. That's a bit strong.
It was
bitch,
strong.
For a little
bitch. She's this unrepentant, like really angry, having spoiled a temper tantrum, spoiled child. And then she switches to super manipulative, love you mommy sort of like vibe going on. And mom just seems relieved that her daughter has had a change of heart as opposed to concerned. I don't know. I don't know if, I'm not a parent. I don't know if that's just how it is. Like if you have a kid who's acting out and suddenly for whatever reason mid-sentence they suddenly change their mood, if you would just be relieved or if you'd think it was kind of weird and you would know that they were putting it on thick.
Yeah.
But I was going to say though, my mom also tells a story about how when I was really little, about the Jessica age 5 or 6 years old, I would pretend to be a princess, a specific princess. And I wouldn't tell her what my name was. And I obviously didn't have the costumes to really dress up like that, but I would pretend. And then she had to figure out which princess I was. And if she didn't address me by my quote-unquote princess name, I wouldn't talk to her. So the part where she's like, "You're not coming in here, Mom. This is my house." I'm like, yeah, of course that's what she said. That makes total sense. Mm-hmm. Mom is probably like, same shit, different day. Like, whatever. I'm so used to this.
Little kids. So Jessica says Dolly's her only friend, like you said earlier. She promises to leave the door open and hugs her mom and says she loves her. As she hugs her, the audience can see that her smile fades. And then as soon as the mom leaves, she closes the door again. So she just lied and Marilyn didn't even turn around. Maybe she did. She's just like, I'm just going to let it go. I don't know. Next, we see Rip Torn has arrived at the site. As he enters, Jimmy is coming out and scares him. So this is where I was saying maybe this is where he used the blueprint plans that he found because he knew how to get to where he needed to get to. Rip and
he had them in his hands.
Oh, he did? As he was coming out?
Yeah, he had them rolled up, so he was like carrying them and walking around with them all the time.
I didn't even realize that. Okay. Rip admonishes him for trespassing, and Jimmy tells him Rip will need Jimmy's help. Rip's accent goes in and out in this scene alone. And at one point in this movie, I don't remember exactly, it sounded like he was doing a British accent. So this guy was just all over the place.
I've seen Rip Torn in other movies. I feel like he's a pretty good actor, so it's weird to me that he didn't even bother trying with the accent to get it consistent.
Yeah. So Rip enters the tomb and sees the tunnel has caved in and he can't go any further. He comes out and Jimmy again offers to help, but he tells him no, he doesn't need any help with the crypt.
Rip tells him no.
Yeah, Rip tells him no. Then Jimmy says, I knew it was a crypt, and then he grabs a helmet and runs back in. And this is where I noticed that he was wearing guy liner and that he's bronzed, like this particular scene.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So Jimmy gets to the entrance where the beginning happened, and he looks in and he sees a bunch of skulls adorning the crypt. He sees a very small stone coffin. Jimmy says he's been reading up on the Mayans and asks, who's buried in the small coffin? A baby king? Rip asks to use the phone at the factory where he is introduced to Elliot, and he sees the dollies. He says these aren't Mayans, but Sanzias, which means Satan on Earth. Which is a very weird name for your group of people. Doesn't really make sense.
Yep. It feels like there's a lot of... So one thing I remember from one of my classes in college was that Spanish was those were the conquistadors. They brought Spanish to Mexico, to Central South America, but all of these tribes had their own language. Sansia and some of these other words kind of sound like they're Spanishified somehow, instead of, maybe I can't, and obviously I don't know. I don't know if they're actually, if they made any effort to make it sound like, kind of a Mayan dialect or something, but it sort of sounded like they were trying to use kind of Spanish words without really doing any research into the fact that that would not be how, that would not have been the language of a tribe that predated the Mayans.
Yeah, I don't think this low-budget horror movie is doing any of that, but I get what you're saying. Next, we see Jimmy looking through those history books that were brought up earlier, looking for information on the Sanzias. At night, Rip gets ready to start the digging out process. Why at night? At night.
Again.
Yeah.
And by himself, without any backup.
Yeah.
He came from a university. It's closed off for the Department of Archaeology. How come he doesn't have anyone else to go with him?
Yeah, it's silly. It doesn't make any sense. But we talked about it when we first saw the movie, that perhaps it was really hot during the day and that's why he was doing it at night.
But it was not.
Oh, because you looked up that.
I looked it up.
Please tell us.
I looked up because at one point they mentioned the date. So I looked up don't do this to me.
Go ahead.
I looked up, first of all, the average.
Oh
You're cringing so much.
No, I'm not. This is excellent research for a horror podcast on a direct-to-video horror movie that nobody's seen. I love it. Tell me.
I'm just saying, why couldn't he have gone during the day? Okay, so it's a crypt, right? It's under the ground. It's in the earth. And as, of course, that would be much cooler than the temperature outside the crypt.
Right.
The average, since it was in May, I looked at the average temperature, and the average temperature in that particular area of Mexico where the Mayans would have been living, so therefore it's kind of like close to Cancun area, I guess, in that general region.
Mm-hmm.
So I use Cancun as the reference point for the temperatures and the average sunset.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have been. It would have been like in the high 80s at the high point of the day. And inside the crypt, it probably would have been like 10 degrees cooler. So there's no reason that the heat would have been the reason that he couldn't go in at a reasonable hour. That's something you would do in the morning. You would go first thing in the morning at 9 o'clock before, things got too crazy. Why are you going into this ancient crypt that just caved in on somebody? Like, someone just died there.
Yeah.
But you're going in alone at night because of the heat, which it's not even that hot. No.
And to be fair, based on what you just said, temperature-wise, it'd be chilly, so he went without a sweater.
Exactly. He should have been wearing more clothes.
That's dangerous. It's just reckless is what it is.
He could get a cold.
A runny nose. So later, Marilyn is talking to Elliot and says she's worried about Jessica's fixation with the doll. I believe they're talking on the phone. He's at the factory. Jimmy fakes going to bed and sneaks out to go to the dig site. At the factory, Elliot leaves and lets a worker, Luis, lock up.
So this is another one of those like weird dichotomies. Rip Torn's character is alone at night at the dig site. Dad is at the factory really late. He's actually talking to Mom and saying, "Oh, we'll talk about this later." And it's like, when? You're never home. You're spending these crazy hours. You're gone. Then Dad leaves and Luis is there alone. And then Jimmy goes out. They're all like kind of doing this like exploring, adventuresome sort of. All the guys have these roles where they're outside the house doing things on their own, taking bold, decisive action, even if they're going headlong into danger and about to get murdered. Mom stays home. Jessica stays home. In fact, Jessica goes to like her own miniature house.
Mm-hmm.
And Camilla, of course, stays there too. The women and the men are very separated in terms of what they do, where the men are like going out, pushing the boundaries, putting themselves in danger, and the women are staying home and doing their thing there. And there's a split I thought was really interesting.
For the most part, right? Because there is a scene later on where Marilyn does actually do something and she leaves the house. But we'll get there.
But not about like even action, just about what their priority is. I thought that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn's saying, "We need to talk about our family." And he's like, "Nope.
I got you.
I've got to deal with this factory stuff.
Important businessman stuff.
I've got to go to this, broke down factory and figure this out. So I can't talk about how our daughter might be losing her mind and having temper tantrums." It's like, all right.
Yeah. And also, why is Luis there at night? So
Yeah.
why is he like cooking like he lives there? So let's talk about it. At the factory, Luis grabs one of the dolls to have a date while he cooks his dinner. Why is he making dinner at the factory?
He's pretending he's flirting with the doll.
Yeah. He asks her if she wants to dance the lambada, which is the forbidden dance. So that's creepy. Then
that was the creepiest part of this whole movie. A grown-ass man flirting with what looks like a baby girl.
A little girl doll.
Yeah. And then getting annoyed at her.
He's an ultimate nice guy routine.
Hashtag nice guy. Oh my God.
He throws his keys at her and says to come up to his room later. Then,
gross.
What she obviously doesn't respond or whatever. He says she's ugly and her nose is shiny too. And she has a big head. All women do, he says. I kind of like Luis, even though he's really creepy.
I liked his character.
Yeah, the character.
His character was interesting, at least.
As he walks away, the doll turns her head to look at him.
You're gonna die, Luis.
Yeah, he turns back to her and notices that the head has moved. Which I like. He's paying attention. He just doesn't ignore it, you know? Mm-hmm. He goes to investigate, but he hears sounds coming from behind him. He turns off the radio and walks away, and we see Dolly's head move. Her head and eyes move.
Wait a second. What noises were so important that you can't investigate the creepy doll that just turned her head to look at you after you insulted her nose?
Right. Yeah, stay there. Priorities, Luis. But so then, this is where we find out that it's not just one doll that's possessed. It's all the dolls.
Right.
Which is, I think, a very interesting concept, you know, which comes into later. There's basically a possessed doll army. It's kind of cool. As he passes by a box, we see another dolly appear. Then we get the obligatory cat jump scare.
A cat jump scare.
Yeah. It's in almost every.
Well, but it's another animal too.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He was going towards the dolls and possibly heading towards danger, and the cat jumps out, and then he backs away.
So, do you think that the animals are like a helpful spirit, warning people away from these things? Because the frog led her to it in the beginning.
The frog is cold-blooded, like literally.
Literally cold-blooded. Wow.
Well, there is though that kind of.
So this whole movie is about
frogs making terrible
warm-blooded
pets.
animals and cold-blooded animals.
Well, but the thing is that it's okay. This is reading way too much into it. But there's all these standoffs, right? The Americans coming in and seeing this dilapidated factory versus the locals who were so impressed that they kept the factory exactly the way it was. Mm-hmm. The cook who has this, shrine, really practicing her religion and that's really important to her versus the mom saying, please don't practice your beliefs, even though you're kind of terrified about my daughter. There's all these like there's all these standoffs. I'm honestly not even surprised that there's a warm-blooded versus cold-blooded animal standoff. Like, this is just par for the course. The frogs are gonna get you. They're clearly on the wrong side of this, on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And dogs and cats are people creatures. They're pets. They're family pets.
I love it. But the dog does attack him later on. A dog does attack him later on.
But I have a thought about that. We will get to it.
We'll get there. So we think we're safe, but then a dolly comes out from behind the box and barks at him. Dog.
That was creepy. Yeah. That was really creepy.
Yeah. If it's a spirit that doesn't know, is kind of just picking up on language, we know later on that there's a dog that lives in the cemetery that abuts the site. Maybe it heard during the day, it heard the dog barking, and so knows that that's something that scares people or something like a sign of warning and uses that.
Yeah.
Wow. This movie is genius.
And by the way, you are never gonna get anyone to move into the ancient Mayan or ancient devil worshiper crypt / creepy doll factory / cemetery area ever again. Like, who decided these three things? Let's definitely put them together.
Yeah, like they're just asking for trouble. It's like, okay, so the Mayan site or the Sensia site, they were there first. Then the cemetery was like, okay, nobody's ever gonna come here, so we might as well.
And it's by a crypt.
Right, exactly. So we might as well have the cemetery here. The doll factory, though, that's some dumb shit. Like, why did they do that? Obviously, we talked about maybe they were trying to have some sort of.
I had a thought.
What was the thought?
I had a thought. Okay, well, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, when we get there,
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Then we see another doll sitting on a shelf above him, and they drop a box down on Luis. Luis gets up and tries to run away. In the meantime, Jimmy is making it towards the factory and cuts across a cemetery and is attacked by a guard dog, barely making it out unscathed. Back at the factory, Luis is being surrounded by multiple Dolly Dearest dolls, and we see shots of their feet as they walk by, or full shots of their bodies.
So we talked about the dog and how the dog was, well, in that scene, you're like, well, the dog is chasing Jimmy. I think that there is no way. I've seen how fast those kind of dogs can run. There is no way that a little boy who doesn't know where he's going outruns a dog. I don't think. I don't think the dog was trying to bite him. I think the dog was trying to get him out.
Of the cemetery? Out of the area.
Yeah, out of the area. Out of the cemetery, out of the area. Couldn't go any further than that, but, you know, like, the dogs have been, like, kind of, like, barking and, like, pushing away. Like, don't come here.
Okay.
Get out. So that's how I took it.
The dog reappears later on, so we'll see what he does then.
Oh, no.
So Luis backs up, back at the factory, Luis backs up to a shelf, and a dolly peeks out from behind a box and says, "Surprise!" So now we're doing one-liners now. The talking on the doll looks pretty okay, the animatronics on it.
Was it animatronics or was it the actor?
No, we only saw that. The actor was never in face. You never saw the actor's face when they were wearing the Dolly Dearest. He was always from behind or far away, or, you know.
Because the dolly... Okay.
The dolly looks really messed up sometimes, and that's just the doll.
Over the course of the movie, the doll changes.
Yeah, but...
It was never him. I just sort of thought at some point it was him, but you're saying it was...
Yeah.
Okay.
So Luis is in fact surprised, and he backs away from the shelf to be tripped by another dolly. He reaches... so you might want to plug your ears, or I want to know what you did when this came up. I forgot what you did. He reaches out to his hand to brace himself, and the luck that he has, wouldn't you know it, he lands in a sewing machine, which promptly starts sewing stitches into his hand. Do you remember this or no?
I do remember this.
Yeah, this is a pretty graphic and gory effect. It was great. Mm-hmm. So then the dolly steps on the pedal for it to go faster.
Ew.
Yeah.
I mean, yuck.
Yeah.
Also, kudos to the doll factory for having such a sturdy sewing machine that it could puncture human skin and bone and not really lose a step. Like, go right along.
Yeah. So,
sewing a little line in the hand.
As you know, as everybody famously knows, I am on TikTok. I don't have an account, or
famously.
I don't post any videos. I think I posted one video. Yeah, I posted one video. But like, I just follow a lot of interesting things. And one of the things was a doll maker. It's showing how they puncture this thick plastic with the hair. You know, it's like rows of hair as they go around. And it looked pretty powerful. So is it powerful enough to repeatedly puncture a man's hand? I don't know. But I do know that from what I saw of industrial doll maker's sewing machine, it looked pretty big. So then Luis screams in pain, and then for some reason, in pure Luis fashion, he tears off his shirt. And of course he tears off his shirt so we can see the next effect, which we see something bubbling up under his skin. And then a shot of Dolly waving bye-bye to Luis. Well, rip Luis, we hardly knew ye. Again, the animatronics on the hand waving by are okay. So I thought we were getting ready to see some alien chest burster shit with this bubbling up under the skin of Luis's chest, but it doesn't pay off because later on in the movie they just say it was a heart attack. So this is really weird. I didn't understand why they would go to this length for that. Maybe they needed another scare in there somewhere. I don't know. What did you think of it?
It felt to me like they're just taking things from other movies that are scary, and because it feels like this 900,000-year-old spirit is not really all that strong. She's working, the doll is working really slowly to chip away at this one family, and murdering people for an evil demonic spirit. This is kind of a slow burn in terms of kills. Mm-hmm. If you think of it as Jesus and this spirit are kind of on equal footing, they're both like these spirits and they have a lot of power over people and they whatever, they're just not on the same footing. They're actually just not. This old spirit is like inhabiting a doll, sewing a guy's hand, pushing an old woman into, isolating her first and then killing her. All the people that the spirit kills are usually fairly alone and vulnerable and in a weird spot. So it's just not a very powerful spirit, it doesn't seem like.
Well, to be fair...
But then it goes... And okay, that's fine on its own. Yeah. But then on the other hand, it just suddenly inhabits this guy's body. Like, there's no way that was a heart attack. I don't think that's how people's hearts explode. And I don't think if you're actually having a heart attack, that you're also ripping off your shirt. It feels like...
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood what you're saying. You're saying that do you think it was just a heart attack, or do you think that the spirit inhabited his body to kill his heart,
I think the spirit inhabited his body to kill his heart, but if that's the case, it's kind of inconsistent with the rest of the film.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is that you keep bringing up this fight between like Jesus and so ultimately God versus this demon, or good versus evil. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, and you're saying that the demon is weaker. To be fair, the demon is the only thing that is real, that we know to be true in this movie. Jesus or God make no display of power here, which I liked. So, in fact, for the purposes of this movie and this one family, the evil is the spirit is stronger, and I liked the fact that they do bring in the nun later on, but the nun's like, "No, I'm gonna sit this one out," and then that whole spiritual part is laid to rest. I'm so happy that it wasn't God is gonna save the day type movie.
Mm-hmm. The first thought that came to mind is that if this spirit is really taking over people slowly and ineffectually, maybe it's like not noticing, the bug under your feet. Maybe God doesn't make it in this, because the way that the doll talks about how Camilla is praying to a spirit who's trying to hurt me. So in this theoretical world, the doll or the demon believes that Camilla praying to this Jesus shrine is going to have some sort of negative effect in some way, shape, or form. So is it that, again, this whole idea that God is not really paying any attention or not really taking a hand or not really this good force in the universe the way we like to believe?
Or not real at all?
Well, but all I'm saying is in the theoretical world of the movie, the spirit takes out Camilla because Camilla is trying.
I gotcha.
So the demon thinks it's real.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, you're right. There's that one part where then, with the nun coming and trying to do something, but she doesn't do anything really. There's another scene with there's these little tiny things where God is sort of like inserted, or religion is inserted, or Christianity specifically, but there isn't really one like flaming sword wielding hero of Christ or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that because it's not real, but the demon kind of thinks it's real? So is it that God doesn't care? Is it that God doesn't think this is a real threat? Like, it's an interesting question of how maybe they were just kind of lazily threw those things in there, like Christianity, demons, go at it, and they didn't really think of the backstory of.
I think we've talked more about the religious backstory than they ever did. in writing the script.
It felt like there were some of those elements though in other movies, and I don't know if you know what the timeline is of this movie versus something like Exorcist, but it almost, maybe it seems like there are just these pieces of religion that are sort of tossed in just to spice things up, because maybe that was just something that was popular at the time.
Well, yeah, this one came out in 91. I don't know if there was a lot of Exorcist movies or stuff coming out, or Exorcist type movies, possession type movies I should say, coming out around that time. So we are now back at the crypt, and he is describing the glyphs in the tomb. It is the story of the creation of Earth, the creation of evil. This is where the Sanzia entombed the devil child. Finally, Jimmy gets to the site, but he hears the dog again. It followed him. He jumps through a window into his dad's factory, breaking a sink as he comes down. So the dog kept following him outside of the dog escaped the cemetery and followed him to the site. But again, he kind of led him into the factory. But that could be Jimmy misreading what's happening, right?
Or it could be that they're just trying to keep him out of the crypt.
That's true. He's like, I got one job, man, is to keep you out of the crypt. If you want to go to the factory, that's your problem.
I sort of felt like that was the point. Like, he was just trying to continue chasing him away, and Jimmy went into the factory, and then the dog can't go into the window and follow him. So, it was sort of like unfortunate that he couldn't keep chasing him home.
Yeah.
Because again, at this point, from the cemetery to the factory, the dog could have caught up with him if he really wanted to take a bite out of Jimmy's butt.
So I think this is the beginning of like Jimmy's comedy of errors, because he ran through the window, or jumped through the window and broke a sink, so the water's coming out. Now he runs around looking for a way to stop the water, and we see that the dolls are stalking him. They even say that now we'll have some fun. He manages to turn off the water, but topples all the dolly boxes. I'm like, this kid needs to stop now, because he's just making a bigger mess. So he notices Luis's hot plate, it's still on, and he turns it off. He also finds the keys on the floor. Back at the dig, Rip finds a woman who was going to blow up the dig. He threatens her with a gun, and she says they need to close the dig now. They have released the evil. You open the gate to hell, and the killings have begun. The children are in danger, she says, and then she runs away. As she's running away, Elliot drives up to see just the ending of that scene. He asks if Rip has seen Jimmy. Rip says, no, I haven't seen my little assistant. So now we're back in the factory, and Jimmy has managed to fix everything that he fucked up. So now he decides to give himself a tour of the factory at night, of course, right? Surrounded by the dollies. We get a cool shot of him walking up to a detached doll head, and as he looks away, the doll's long tongue comes out and wags back and forth, and so do the eyes. Do you remember that scene?
I do.
What'd you think of that?
I didn't really understand it. It seemed like on par with the demon thing, whatever was going on with Louise's chest. It's cool. It sets the tone and the mood, but like the doll obviously didn't have that actual tongue, right?
Right.
It wouldn't. That wasn't actually already there. So was that the demon's tongue that is sticking out? Like, how did the demon manifest in the doll, but it can't It opens up a whole other can of worms, and I think honestly in the end it was just like, this will be cool. Let's throw it in the movie.
Yeah, it'll look cool. So Jimmy finally smartens up and says he's leaving, but he trips and falls next to Luis's body.
There's a lot of tripping and falling in this movie. There's a lot of it.
Well, yeah, like the doll. Like, what else can they? How can they? How can they threaten you?
Why is Jimmy? They're about on par with each other.
No, they're not. Jimmy's not 3 feet tall. He's an 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid. He's like
He's stunted.
His
growth is stunted.
5 feet tall.
But while we're talking about it, one of the other things that I noted is that that distinction between Jessica and Jimmy. Jessica is staying home. She's playing with Dolly. She's like basically making friends. She's making a really bad friend, but she basically came down to Mexico. She was really alone. And she's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a way to make a friend. And I don't know where I'm going to find one, but I'm going to try to turn this doll of mine into a friend because I need someone to hang out with. Jimmy, on the other hand, is I'm going to go out. I'm going to go find things outside of the house. I'm going to go to the crypt. Even when he gets to the factory, he fucks up all these things, like you said, at the factory. And it's weird that Luis's hot plate is on, but Luis isn't there. And instead of saying, this is weird, I'm going to go get out of here and try to find an adult. He's like, no, I'm going to keep looking around and see what else is. So there's this explorer. I'm going to be outside the house. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go to the furthest reach. But again, Jessica's at home just kind of playing with Dolly and trying to make a friend.
So you brought this point up about the roles that men and women are taking in this movie. But the movie was written and directed by a woman. So what do you think that says about, is she trying to legitimize those roles, or is she making a commentary on those roles?
I don't know. I wonder if it's just that this is just how she's used to the family dynamics playing out. That's what I remember about my family. My mom was home all the time. We didn't have any family in the area that was close enough to come over and just quickly babysit. So mom had to be home all the time. And dad was gone a lot. Saying you wait till your father gets home, that was not a threat in my household. He didn't come home early enough for us to be realistically threatened by that.
Yeah.
So it was that same thing of dad going out and doing things out of the house. So I don't know if she's trying to make a point, or if that was just a dynamic that the writer, the director was used to. But I did find it very interesting, and I especially when I was reflecting back on it and how we spoke earlier about those interviews that they did, especially with the main actress, Marilyn. Marilyn's character, I remember her saying that a female director seemed much more interested in the relationship aspects of those family dynamics of the horror, as opposed to just like gore and jump scares and like that being the main focus, or like the funny part of horror, which I've definitely seen as well being used as a device, but that the director's Maria's focus was more on these dynamics and these relationships. So I just thought it was really interesting to see this kind of split of, we're not on the same team. We should be on the same team, but we're not.
Mm. So Jimmy has tripped on Luis's body, so he runs screaming from the scene. He runs out of the factory and runs into his dad. So he tells him that he's seen Luis's body, so they go and check on him. And then we see Dolly slinking back into the shadows.
Is it Dolly, or so is it the Dolly, the main Dolly, or is it one of the other Dollies?
Again, this is a religious thing. Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, same thing, right?
Yeah.
And are there 3 Dollies? Father,
No.
Son, Holy Spirit? Or are there more?
I think there's like a lot more
Okay.
from the factory. In the factory.
But how many of them are possessed?
I don't know that one.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Back at the house, Elliot says that it looked like a heart attack for Luis. He questions Jimmy about why he went there. Jimmy says he read up on the Sanzias thing. He read up on the Sanzias. They were trying to create a devil child, and it got him worked up. And so that he was really interested in it. So Marilyn is intrigued by the Sanzia name. She goes upstairs to check on Jessica and wants to move Dolly to the chair. Jessica says, "Don't touch her." Marilyn insists. Jessica screams, "I'll kill you if you try to separate us. I'll kill you. She's mine. She's mine." As soon as Elliot comes in the room, she changes her attitude and says, "Daddy, Mommy's trying to take Dolly away from me," and Elliot falls for it. But also, I wanted to go back a little bit. I think Jimmy walked in and saw and heard the voice and was like, "Whoa, cool voice, sis," right? I think that happened.
Yeah, I love that reaction. That seemed like such a big brother reaction. Like, that's awesome. How'd you get your voice? Didn't he say something like, "How'd you get your voice to do that?" or something like that?
Yeah.
It was so perfect. Like, Jimmy and Jessica, those actors were amazing.
Yeah, they did great jobs. As as far as creepy kids go, they were creepy the right amount, but they were good actors. That was my problem. My main problem with Child's Play is that kid actor is terrible. So I want to make sure that I'm saying that when Jessica's saying that she's going to kill her mom, she's possessed by the doll, by the demon, by the spirit.
I'm not sure at what point it crosses the line. And we've already seen Jessica being kind of manipulative and slowly amping up her manipulativeness. So she acts very differently towards her parents. Her mom, she's already been hostile, she's been aggressive, and in a normal kind of kid way, throwing a tantrum, saying I'm gonna kill you is extreme, but it's not outside the realm of what I could imagine a little kid who had an anger management issue saying. Like, I could imagine that happening. Mm. It's not like she's speaking in tongues or, so I don't know if she's possessed or if Dolly is just filling her head with all this stuff and kind of swaying her behavior. So that, I'm not sure about that. What was your...
I took it as her being possessed. So what you're saying is she will eventually be possessed, but at this point you don't think she's possessed?
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
I think she gets there, but I don't know if that's... I feel like this is like Dolly possessing her like 30% or something.
Gotcha. Outside of her room, Elliot and Marilyn are talking, and Marilyn's like, she's acting terrible. And Elliot says what Marilyn's saying is irrational. Which is, like, unbelievable by the dad.
I also thought the same thing. That's when I sort of really noticed that the different teams situation going on, and then I reflected back and saw how it had been happening the whole movie. But yeah, my God,
the spirit is working actively against his family, but the dad isn't helping any either. Mm-hmm. So, Marilyn says she wants to take Jessica back to LA. Elliot disagrees and says that they need to tough it out. Okay, Dad. Like, I guess it is understandable through his viewpoint, not saying it's correct or right, but just trying to see it from his point of view. Because he's at the factory all day, he's not seeing everything that Jessica's doing. But at the same point, because he's not there every day, he should be taking more seriously what the person who is there all day is saying, and maybe believing his wife. Right?
To me, this felt perfectly in character with him. I saw it happening, and I thought, oh man, more people are probably going to get murdered, Dad, because of your inability to believe your wife. But also it seemed perfectly in character. Not only is he not there during the day seeing Jessica, because it's one thing to hear someone say, my daughter's having a tantrum. It's another thing to see it, right? When you see it, it really hits home. But also, he clearly feels like he can't get out of this factory situation. He comes down, he sees this ramshackle factory. He's really upset about it, clearly. And instead of trying to figure out a way to sell it or get that property off his hands and start over again, even though he seems incredibly, I don't know what the word is, but He just seems really upset about the state of this factory and how hard he's going to have to work, and it's not what he wanted, but he's just going to do it anyways, and he's going to keep his family down there with him while he's doing this. Mm-hmm. So he's already committed. And once you're committed, you don't want to hear that actually you need to turn around and go back to LA. And certainly if the potential for losing all this money and sinking more money into a doll factory that isn't worth what you thought it was worth, if that doesn't turn you around, your kid's temper tantrum is not going to do it either. You're just going to tell yourself whatever you need to believe to think that you've made the right choice.
Yeah, and this was 1991, mm-hmm. So it's still, that still feels like it's a dad knows best scenario, which is unfortunate.
One thing I noted that kind of goes hand in hand with that is how in charge the dad seems to be, even though he's not around. And I noted that even when I was going through the very few reviews there were of this film. So when I went through online reviews, there were a lot of people that made it seem like the dad was the driver of the story. The dad moves. That's weird. The dad moves down, and he moves his family down to this factory. Things are going wrong, and then dad helps fight the evil or something like that. But they make him sound like the main protagonist, and really he's more of a supporting character than that. Mom and daughter are the primary actors in this film. I only found one place. I actually called it out because I was so impressed. Wicked Horror. WickedHorror.com had a review of Dolly Dearest where they correctly, identified that mom and daughter are driving this. But every other site that I saw had dad as the main actor here. And in a way, it's sort of true. Like, he's not there, but he's still calling the shots. He's moving his family to this town so he can work near a crypt in a cemetery. Like, this is such a bad decision. And he's just doing it, and nobody has any ability to go against him. He has the last word.
Yeah, and every decision he made has been the wrong one, so I don't know why Marilyn still lets him do that. So the next day at the dig, Marilyn visits Rip and asks about the glyphs. He says they're looking for the remains of the Sanzia devil child. Legend says that the Sanzia prepared a place for the birth of Satan's child. They suckled a child that was neither man nor beast. It had the body of an infant and the head of a goat. They fed it warm blood of slaughtered children. A child so evil that its reign of terror almost caused their extinction, until they put the creature to its howling death. I like that, the description of this devil child. So then Marilyn says, "You knew that and you opened it?" And then he says, "Yes, of course. I don't believe in this junk." He's a man of reason, which I appreciated. Marilyn says...
Even though he's wrong.
In this instance. He's wrong. Marilyn says the night watchman, the archaeologist, and Camilla have all died. So obviously something is happening. So then the next scene is this is what I was talking about. This is where she takes the first active steps, I believe, right? Even though her going to see Rip would be the first step, right? Mm-hmm. But then she goes to see Camilla's sister, who is a nun at the convent. Mm-hmm. Back at the house, Jimmy is confronted by Dolly and Jessica. He says she should be taking a nap, but she mean mugs him and ignores him. Back at the convent, Marilyn speaks with Sister Alva, and as soon as she steps in from the room, Alva knows who she is. She admonishes her for ignoring Camilla's warnings. Alva says it's too late. The devil child has been released. This is where Marilyn says, like, the line of the movie. She says, "I'm not losing my daughter to a 900-year-old goat head."
I just wanted to mention that in the scene where Jessica's supposed to be taking a nap, mm-hmm. Jimmy is the older brother. He's presumably in charge while, like, with parents not around, Jimmy's the next in line to be in charge.
Yeah.
And he's already demonstrated that he's able to, he's not some shrinking violet. He's going to cemeteries in the middle of the night and trying to explore crypts. He's not, a shy little kid who's easily overpowered. He's like standing up to an adult and saying, hey, you're going to want me later down in that crypt when the tunnel's falling in around your head.
Yeah.
But his little sister is scaring the shit out of him. And she says, she gives him that mean mug look that says, I'm not taking a nap. And he's like, oh, or not. That's fine too. Like he immediately backs off.
Yeah.
That's
pretty funny.
That was
I hadn't thought of it like that.
That's like, okay, so Jessica is clearly in charge when even Big Brother, like I understand having dad wander around your finger and having mom kind of scared of you because you're throwing temper tantrums. But when your big brother is scared of you also,
yeah,
that's it. She has total control over the whole family. Yeah. It's complete.
The takeover is complete. So Marilyn asks, could the spirit go into a doll? Sister Alva says the devil may take any form, one or many. She says all she can do is pray for them. And then apparently Rip was there the whole time.
Standing in the doorway like a creeper.
In the door like a creeper. So I don't know if he followed her or if he went with her, because the whole time, she was talking to nuns before trying to get in to see Sister Alva, and we didn't see him. So I wonder, if after they shot those scenes, they're like, hey, we need to kind of get you in this scene as well. I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. But he's still not convinced.
He's not convinced, but he came to see a nun to talk about it.
Right, yeah. So then Marilyn's kind of like, you know what? I tend not to believe in this shit either, but I also have a girl at home being controlled by dolls, so I kind of need to start believing in some of this shit, basically.
I love that line. I don't care. I don't care if this goes outside of my beliefs. I'm saving my family because clearly something's fucking us up.
Right. She's not standing in her own way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hate it when people do that, when they hear the spooky noise and they're like, it's probably my imagination. Or they get into a situation and they're like, surely nothing could go wrong here, so I'm going to ignore my instincts. Mom is like, I don't know what's going on. It doesn't make any sense, but clearly something is wrong. I can feel it. So whatever we need to do, let's get it done.
Yeah. Later at home, Marilyn's looking for Jessica, and as she passes a closet, we see a small hand reach out for Marilyn. It's Jimmy. He says he's hiding from Jessica and Dolly. He says the doll talks and moves. Marilyn is like, well, where are they? And Jimmy says they're in her room. Jimmy gives Marilyn the key to Jessica's room. What did you think about this scene? Or did you have something to say?
I like the jump scare aspect of it, where they're sort of setting you up for the doll to be in the closet or for Jessica to be in the closet, and then it's just Jimmy and he's hiding out. So I like that tension and then release. What movie were we watching? It was an old black and white movie, and there was some scene in a pool at night, and this woman was in a pool at night, and then this, I don't know, tiger or something, I can't remember, some tiger spirit thing was coming after her, but somehow she escaped. And they said that this was a really novel idea, the whole idea that you'd have all this lead up and build up and tension and something's going to happen, oh my god, they're going to die, and then in the end nothing happens, and the audience exhales, but it's all this lead up for nothing. And of course then later on there's a scene where something does happen, and sometimes the next scene where the bad thing does happen happens a lot faster because you've already had all the build up.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say that this is the proudest moment I've ever been. I'm a proud husband here. Yeah, you're talking about cat people from 1942. Yeah.
I thought that the proudest moment that you had as a husband was when I referenced Halloween 6 previously.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you reference a horror movie, I love it.
And it was a deep cut, too. It was Halloween 6,
yeah,
not...
Deep cut.
I'm still waiting for my proudest moment for you, don't worry. I'll let you know next.
Oh, thanks, sweetie. So Marilyn goes and investigates. She finds Dolly sitting in a chair, and Dolly's face is grimacing. Her eyes and her mouth are moving. Her whole face no longer looks angelic. Marilyn asks, "Where's Jessica?" And then Dolly says, "She's in here with me. She belongs to me. You'll never get her back. She'll always be mine."
I thought that "she's in here with me" thing, I thought it meant that Jessica, because Jessica was her personality was slowly disappearing. She was this little girl, and then and she was sad about moving, and she was writing letters to her friends, and then little by little, Dolly is taking over her whole personality. I legitimately thought when she said Jessica's in here with me, that she meant that Jessica didn't exist anymore, and the doll had basically consumed Jessica. Like, she'd fully taken her over.
So I didn't think the body has disappeared?
Something like that. Or that Jessica, maybe like a poltergeist kind of thing where the little girl, gets kind of sucked into the... Or maybe a situation where they're going to find Jessica and she was going to be unconscious because... I don't know. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but that's what I thought.
Okay. So we actually hear the doll then say, "Mommy, Mommy, help me, help me." So then Marilyn says, "No, I want my daughter."
But Jessica's right there in the room.
Yeah. And then Dolly starts laughing maniacally.
See, that's what I thought. I thought somehow she'd consumed her in some way, shape, or form. That she'd turned her into the doll.
Yeah. So like there would be a new doll, like another doll. So like if at first there were 4 dolls. Didn't get that far
in my head.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then Jimmy calls Elliot at the factory, and we see that one of the dolls have placed the receiver off the hook so the call can't go through. So now we know that there's communication between the dolls.
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Evidence, yeah, that they're connected, that they're linked.
And somehow the dolls figured out the phone. They not only knew how to sabotage the phone, they also knew enough to know when somebody would be calling.
Exactly. Yeah, they're smart, these evil spirits.
Weird how they learned English, right? Like, that's the part we're hung up on. Not the telephone, cutting bangs.
All of it. Okay. Back at home, Marilyn has gotten a shotgun and goes to Jessica's room. She sees the room is empty. Then the door swings shut. She goes out the other way and sees the doll has gone into the closet. She places a chair by it to lock her in. She goes to check the rest of the house and almost shoots Jessica, who she thought was a doll. She grabs Jessica and yells at Jimmy to get in the car.
Another instance where Jessica's become so doll-like, you can't really tell the difference.
Yeah. When they open the door, there's a dolly holding the keys saying, "Oh, goody, we're going for a ride." So this is where they were just trying to rip off Chucky with the one-liners. And of course, Chucky was ripping off Freddy with the one-liners. So I don't think it was necessary. I think it's creepier if the doll said something else or didn't say anything at all, or I don't know. I think this movie up to this point, or the point where the dolls start doing one-liners, was like diverging, making its own path as a movie, as a subgenre of creepy doll movies, but then kind of went back in line of the Chuckies with these one-liners, and it didn't add anything to me, for me, I should say. What do you think about it?
I don't know. I don't have a really good memory of Child's Play. I'm not 100% sure I even saw the original movie and not maybe the second show. I feel like I saw it like after school, probably a TNT version with all the really nasty parts cut out, edited out. But I didn't have that reference point of Chucky. To me, it just felt like the doll was becoming more human-like and was basically, when you see those kind of movies where there's, or even TV shows, I remember seeing something like this watching Supernatural. There's like a shapeshifter sort of situation. That element, that kind of fantasy element, there's usually a period where the shapeshifter is breaking into the new role and isn't comfortable with it yet. And then slowly they get more comfortable in it. So to me, that's kind of what it felt like. The doll starts out just being immobile, sitting in the factory, not doing anything, kind of waiting and figuring out, feeling out where am I going to go? And then as they get more contact with humans, they start taking on more and more characteristics until at last the doll's face, like in the beginning, the face of the doll was just a regular doll face, but by the end, it actually looks like kind of a demonoid face and scrunched up. So to me, that's how I saw it working out. Like the doll is just getting like is very quickly learning, human language and what cultural elements and what a telephone is really fast because it's a demon, and now it's got one-liners. Big
step back.
Not a big step back, but that supposedly that is one of the hardest things to learn in a language, is how to be sarcastic or how to be funny, because you have to have such a good command of the language. So that's like the last thing to come along. So to me, it made sense that the doll isn't really doing that too much until the end of the movie, when it's being snarky, which is hard to do until you really feel comfortable.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think that you're coming at this from having seen lots of well-written horror movies and shows like Supernatural, where they thought.
Wait, so you agree that Supernatural is a well-written show? I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. Okay, no, I'm just on this podcast officially. Yeah. You're saying okay.
I've never seen maybe more than 2 episodes of it, and I'm not a fan of Ghost of the Week shows, so I just don't like that.
Which you transitioned away from after the first season, but go ahead.
Okay, but anyway, I think that because you've been exposed to that sort of stuff, you're giving this movie credit for the work that those other movies and shows did, which is very generous of you. I don't think that this is what the movie was doing.
You think, then why wasn't the doll doing one-liners from the beginning?
Because they're just like, they're building the suspense at the beginning, and now it's time to kill everybody.
Okay.
So the doll...
I give the writer more credit. Well. Do you know what it reminds me of? That movie, The Fall.
Wow. Okay, I'd love to hear this.
Just from the language aspect, because you remember how in The Fall that little girl...
Don't. We're not talking about that little girl. She's the cutest fucking character.
She's in a league of her own, and she definitely is not going to be compared from an acting perspective to the doll. Let's just put that out there so nobody has to feel threatened. Mm-hmm. But I remember in the commentary where they were talking about how the actress was not a native English speaker. Mm-hmm. And so they filmed the scenes kind of in order that that little girl actress was in, and her English gradually improved. Mm-hmm. And it was the same thing in the movie. In the movie, that girl was not a native English speaker. And so it actually looked very natural, where as the movie progressed, this little girl's English gets better as she has more exposure to all the people in her environment.
Again.
Similarly, the language skills and the cultural understanding gradually progresses. I don't think this is a novel concept. I don't know why you can't give the writer credit for thinking that up, or at least playing into something that was so established.
Because, again, you prove my point that you've seen a great movie and are taking all the work that those writers did on an amazing script and giving this script the benefit of the work that was done on that movie. Also, I forgot what my other point was. Oh, also, if in fact that is what she was doing, I'm not saying that it's not, but if in fact there was, it is so subtle as to be almost unnoticeable.
Except I noticed
so then why would, right, because you are specifically looking for this. I think you're trying to make this link. And in fact, the only links that you've made have been while we've been talking about it, not while you're watching the movie. And the average viewer isn't going to be...
All of my insights?
No, I'm talking about these specific ones. The average moviegoer isn't going to be reviewing the movie afterwards on a podcast. So they're not doing all that work that we have done. Specifically, you've done a lot of work on it. So it's so subtle as to be completely missed by 99.9% of the audience. But sure, definitely it's possible that she did it. It's an interesting idea, and I will hold out that there's a possibility that that's what the writer was going for. So the doll advances on them and says to Jessica, "Jessica, let's play with mommy." which is like Jessica's cue to start attacking her mom. And Dolly's in the background kind of hyping her up, saying, kill her, kill her. This is it was a creepy scene.
I had a thought on this, which is, why doesn't the doll kill Jessica's mom? Why doesn't the doll, up to this point, the doll has been killing people.
Yeah.
But now she's egging Jessica on. Is that part of the transformation for Jessica?
I think it's a devil doll, or the devil child, right? What do they call it? What do the Sanzia call it? A devil child? Mm-hmm. They're trying to make. It's the most. It's evil, right? So what's the most evil thing that they can think of? Is it killing the mom, or it having the daughter kill the mom? You know. So I think maybe that's what was going on there. So Jimmy has retrieved the shotgun that Marilyn dropped, and after some trouble, finally shoots Dolly, saying, "Play with this, bitch."
And we all know that Zach would be like having a fit if he saw a little kid handling a shotgun, accurately shooting a doll over a fighting mom and daughter, and not having any kind of recoil or anything like that from this huge gun.
Right.
He would lose his mind if he had to evaluate this.
Friend of the podcast, Zach Chapman. So the shot blows Dolly through the door, and Jessica comes to from the possession.
That is, you asked about the possession versus influence or whatever. That is, and we've been talking about it all along. That's where I thought that she was definitely possessed.
Right.
It wasn't that Dolly was just bringing things like loosening her inhibitions. It was also that Dolly had a hold on her. Dolly dies. Jessica immediately changes her whole attitude, all of her behavior.
Yeah.
It's like someone flipped a switch.
Yeah. Back at the dig, Rip has finally made it into the crypt and is taking the top off the tomb.
Why? Why is he doing that?
He's a man of science. It finally comes off as an explosion, and we see fog coming from it. Inside, we see the skeleton of a baby with a goat head, and Rip says, "Oh my God, it's true. What have I done?" Now he realizes what's happening, and he books it out of the cave. In the factory...
That's what it took. A goat head.
Right, or the explosion and the goat head. So in the factory, Elliot hears a noise, and we see the dollies, and one of them says, "It's time to play." We see one dolly in the rafters. They tie a rope around Elliot's leg and lift him above a boiling vat. "We got you now. This is fun," they say. They're laughing their demonic devil doll laughs. Ready to go in the mixer? So they even know what a mixer is. They understand. It's just,
and how to work it, and a winch.
Yeah. They start to lower him, and Rip bursts in and trips, another trip, and sees Dolly, who says, "You want to be next?" He kills the power on the wall, which stops the winch. So then Elliot unties himself and comes down. We see the dollies in the background still. They go outside and see Marilyn and the kids pull up. Again, Marilyn stays outside. She doesn't come inside the factory. Rip grabs the dynamite from the dig and says they're going to destroy them. So they go back in the factory with the short fuse dynamite.
Good idea. Always a good idea going in with short fuse dynamite.
Yeah. Why not just stay outside and throw the dynamite too?
Well, you don't know where it's going to land, do you?
That's true. So Marilyn and Jessica and Jimmy go down the hill, but fucking Jimmy changes his mind and runs back saying he's going to blow up the pit, which, to his credit, he does successfully.
Of course he does.
Yeah. Inside, we see...
He just handled a shotgun expertly. Of course he managed to...
Jimmy is kind of like a badass in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, we see Elliot and Rip throwing dynamite, but when they do, Dolly throws water on the fuse or pulls out the fuse, and she even stabs Elliot in the leg with the scissors.
Is that the only wound that Dad takes? Because that seems really unfair. He is basically the reason this is all happening.
Yeah, that is the only injury he gets, and Marilyn doesn't get any. I think he's the only one of the family to get injured.
She gets her ass beat by her daughter, though.
Oh, that is true. That is true. Like she's flailing on her, yeah. Dolly picks up one of the sticks and it blows up right in her hands. Then the whole factory goes up and we hear the demon voices in pain. We get a shot of the camera zooming into the factory burning, and we're half expecting Dolly to come back out, but she doesn't. And the scene ends and the credits roll.
Missed opportunity for Dolly to come, one of the dolls to come out at the end.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, even, I mean, it would have been so great to see, like, because this came out in 91. Halloween 2 came out in 81, so 10 years before. How cool, at the end of that one, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Halloween 2, I'll give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Michael, at the end, comes out, he's on fire, and he starts walking down the corridor or whatever, and then eventually falls over and quote-unquote dies. How cool it would have been to see Dolly do that, or something similar, It would have been great. What I read in a review, or I don't even remember where I read it, is that they were trying to set it up for an obvious, like a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we already know there was multiple dolls, so if only one does that, you still got a couple.
That was the opportunity to leave the door open, and they didn't.
Yeah. Or they did. They did leave it open for
Did they?
Well, because you don't see them actually die. Or destroyed. Or you see one destroyed by the dynamite. You see another destroyed by the shotgun, but there's still a couple more.
I don't understand how that works either. The spirit was disembodied and went into a doll.
Yeah, exactly. So why, now that you're
destroying the doll, you're destroying the spirit somehow?
Yeah.
It was definitely a good place for a sequel.
I think they needed to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I didn't understand, even at the end, is what was the doll's game plan? A lot of times I feel like what the point is, or whatever is attacking you is so disembodied. Like, for instance, when you see Poltergeist, and there are all of these, there's a poltergeist and it's sort of affecting the house, and it just basically wants the family out and off of its, it has kind of a purpose, but it's also like there's all of these different things at play. So you're like, okay, I know what the spirit wants. The spirit wants this family, and probably all the families on the block, to move off of this basically land that was previously a cemetery, right?
Yeah.
What is the doll's purpose? She killed, 4 people? How many people did she kill? Not many. The archaeologist, she killed Camilla. Who else? Louise. 3 people?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. To me, like, the whole point, they're talking about this demonic spirit previously, back, 900,000 years ago, kind of going after the children. And at one point they're going after the children. How much better would it have been if that doll had sort of stayed dormant in those dolls, and then once the factory was up and the dolls get shipped out to people, then they're little demon dolls all over the U.S. Like, that would have been genius. What was the doll's point in trying to get Jessica to kill her mom? Then what happens? You're a 1,000-year-old spirit. You figured out how a car works, a phone works, you know how to speak English, and you know how to do one-liners, but you don't even have a plan about, like, what's going to happen next. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if the plan was the eventual full takeover of Jessica, in which now, she would leave the doll body behind and just be Jessica. But the plan was thwarted.
At what point was the Jessica going to be completely taken over?
Yeah.
And how
there's not like any ritual or anything, right?
And if the spirit was like in the doll, and then they shoot the doll, and then the spirit's free to go wherever, why didn't it just go into Jessica? It already had a pretty strong hold over her. That to me is the biggest plot hole, that I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the point is.
Yeah.
There's just like this loose thing. Oh, they're going after the children. What do you mean? In what way?
So, what did you think of this movie?
Overall, I really liked it. You could tell that it didn't have the biggest budget, and so there were things that I was willing to forgive. There were some plot holes and inconsistencies that I thought, that's fine, I'm okay with it. There was a focus on these family dynamics though. And that to me seemed like the real killer. Like these people not trusting each other and not helping each other, not working as a team. They're just obviously so independent or individual. They're so cut off from each other that they can't move forward. They can't do anything together to better the situation. And that was done really well. I really believed mom and dad having the split. Dad feeling like he has to be at the factory all the time. He's got to get it up and running. He can't really look back. He's just got to move forward. Mom feeling kind of cut off and at home. And dad's, she doesn't have the support that she needs. She doesn't even have her friends or family around to help back her up or talk to her about her daughter. And then there are these two kids and that they should be, helping each other out, but they're kind of at different ages. So they're going in different directions and they're dealing with it differently. All those things felt really very genuine. I liked all that interplay, even the interplay between the dad coming in and there's this huge conflict between this new, white American family coming into this established community and just making all these waves, digging up, all these outsiders come in. The outsiders come in, they dig up a crypt, they release an evil spirit, they reopen a factory, distribute evil dolls. They don't listen to the people who are trying to bless the house and save the family. And then they don't work together as a team to, try to fix anything. And I love that the way that worked together in the movie, the way that factor.
So we've been talking a long time about this movie. I think we've talked about this movie more than anybody has ever talked about this movie.
Someone had to.
Somebody had to. This is definitely, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's like I wouldn't even see it's a cheap knockoff. I think it's up there with Child's Play. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun to watch, and there was some parts that were bad and some parts that were good. I really wish the director had a chance to do something else, and I don't know why she didn't have that chance. But what we do here is, as I'm sure you're aware, since you have heard me doing these podcasts before, we rate the movie on a scale of upside down crosses, like 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. So how would you rate this movie on that scale?
As a movie or as a
this is
1990s horror film?
Nope, this is your rating, whatever you want to rate it as.
Okay. I'm torn. I think that...
No, Rip Torn was the archaeologist. You're Hilary. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. It's late, guys.
We are tired.
I think I'm going to rate it at 5 upside down crosses.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I think there were a lot. It's hard because a lot of times I feel like a 5-star, 5 crosses, whatever, should be something that is a lot closer to perfect than this film was. There were a lot of plot holes and gaps and weird special effects that, were a little distracting. But I loved it because I felt like it hit really close to home. I love this idea of focusing on a mother-daughter relationship and that being really important. I loved all the time that went into the emotional aspects of the horror, of not just a doll coming to life, but your family not being someone that you can trust. That was really creepy. I thought, and also I'm taking into consideration all the special factors like the budget, what it probably was. The director, this was like one of her first real directing jobs that wasn't a porn. This is her first non-porn directing first time directing something that was not an X-rated film. And so when you take all of those things into account, I think that the end product shines more than it has any right to. Also, anybody who had to deal with Rip Torn, who apparently, quote unquote, chewed up directors, is...
Yeah, I agree with you there. I really enjoyed this movie. It was a fun watch. I definitely recommend anybody to watch it. I can't go as high as 5 upside down crosses with you. But it does have a lot of rewatchability, and I think with a crowd it'd be really fun. So that does contribute to it. So I'm going to give it 3.5 upside down crosses.
Whoa.
Yeah, you should definitely give this one a try. It's a lot of fun. And now that it's been released from Vinegar Syndrome, it's got a 2K release. Really looks beautiful. I definitely recommend it. All right, Hilary. So I will now be absolving you of your horror movie sin. In order to get the absolution, I will be assigning you 3 movies, and you just need to watch it. And obviously, I'll be watching them with you since we live in the same household. And then hopefully you come back and we can talk about them or some other movie. Sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so the first one right off the bat, of course, we got to go with Child's Play. You said earlier that you saw it, you think you saw it earlier, but you don't remember any of it.
Years ago.
Yeah, so from 1998, directed by Tom Holland. It's the top of the pyramid or top of the mountain for evil devil or evil dolls. Right. So as far as the public is concerned. So that's the first one. Then I'd recommend Dolls from 1987, directed by Stuart Gordon. That's a great one. And then the last one I would say, and I think this is going to be the one you like the most, Trilogy of Terror, released 1975 directed by Dan Curtis. And this is actually an anthology film and only the third one. And it's made for TV as well. And only the third one involves a devil doll, but it's the best. And I really think you're going to like it.
I can't wait.
All right, Hilary. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Did you have fun?
Watching the movie or
talking about it?
Sitting in this hot room talking to you.
Sounds like you had fun.
I did.
If you want to follow me, you can follow me at on Twitter at MHCPod, like My Horror Confessional Pod. You can follow me on Instagram at My Horror Confessional. You can email me if you have any ideas or you just want to say hi at myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. The music is by Taylor Fox. You can follow her on Instagram at @TheTaylorFox. And the artwork is by Captain Mikey. You can follow him on Instagram at CAPN_Mikey_art. Captain Mikey Art. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.